When was the last time you truly paused before a mirror and not only looked at your reflection, but softened into the gaze of the person who has carried you through every storm, every choice, every silent night of doubt? Most of us glance, hurriedly noting imperfections in the surface, comparing ourselves to others, and then moving on. Rarely do we stay long enough to recognize the being standing there as a lifelong companion, the one who breathes with us in every moment, who suffers our mistakes and celebrates our quiet victories. The Buddha once taught that, among all relationships we cultivate in this fleeting life, the most important is the relationship we hold with our own mind. For if the mind is not understood, if the heart is not cared for, then every bond outside will tremble like a fragile leaf in the wind. Imagine for a moment the intimacy of knowing yourself the way you wish to be known by another. Before the words of praise or criticism, before the recognition of society, before even the affection of family or friends, there is a more ancient connection, your relationship with you. The Dhammapada whispers that the self is the master of the self. And yet how many of us live estranged from this master, turning instead to strangers, to passing tides of approval, to the glitter of achievements that fade as quickly as dawn mist. Like a traveler chasing the horizon, we forget that the sun has always been shining in our own chest. The Stoics said that the inner citadel must be guarded, and Buddhism echoes the same truth: unless we find refuge within, no outer temple can give us peace. Too often, we abandon ourselves, believing that others will fill the gap. We imagine that love from outside will soothe the loneliness. Inside that applause will silence the critic, that success will patch the hole of unworthiness. Yet, like pouring water into a cracked vessel, the more we receive without tending the fracture, the more quickly it drains away. Think of the last time you received kind words from someone dear. Did they linger, or did they dissolve within hours, replaced by self-doubt? This is because when the relationship with ourselves is neglected, we have no soil for those seeds of kindness to grow. They land on barren ground. The Buddha compared the untrained mind to a restless monkey leaping from branch to branch. No matter how many fruits it grasps, hunger remains. Only when the mind is steadied in compassion for itself does it taste nourishment. And so the question arises, what does it mean to love yourself? Not in the shallow sense of indulgence or fleeting pleasure, but in the deep, steady way a gardener tends a tree through all seasons. Self-love is not selfishness. It is survival, the recognition that if we abandon the very root of our being, everything else will wither. A bodhisattva practices compassion for all sentient beings. Yet the journey begins with extending that compassion inward. Otherwise, we risk offering others water from an empty well. In Zen, there is a teaching that says, the traveler cannot run away from his own shadow. You carry yourself wherever you go. No matter the city, no matter the companions, no matter the circumstances, you bring along your thoughts, your habits, your relationship with your inner life. If that relationship is wounded, the wound seeps into every encounter. But if it is healed with patience and kindness, then even solitude becomes luminous and every relationship flourishes. Consider this: if you had a beloved friend who was weary, who made mistakes, who carried regrets, how would you speak to them? You would listen gently, you would offer patience, you would remind them of their worth. Now, reflect on how you speak to yourself in such moments. Do you offer the same compassion, or do you wield harsh words like weapons? The Buddha urged us to practice right speech, not only outwardly, but inwardly, for the voice we hear most is our own. The words repeated in the silence of our heart become the architecture of our identity. If those words are cruel, we inhabit a house of thorns. If those words are kind, we dwell in a garden of peace. There is a Zen story of a monk who once carried a heavy sack across the mountains. When asked why he did not set it down to rest, he replied, "I have carried this burden for so long, I forgot it was not part of me." Many of us carry such burdens in the form of self-criticism, shame, or the belief that we are unworthy of our own love. We become so accustomed to these thoughts that we confuse them with our essence. But the Dharma reminds us these are passing clouds, not the sky itself. The sky of your being has never been stained. To begin loving yourself is to begin remembering that beneath the mistakes lies potential, beneath the scars lies resilience, beneath the doubts lies the simple miracle of being alive. Each breath is proof that you are worthy of care, for existence itself is rare and precious. The Buddha taught of the precious human birth, that among countless forms of life to be born, with the capacity to reflect, to practice, to awaken, is a treasure beyond measure. If you cannot yet see beauty in your reflection, begin with gratitude that you are here at all, with breath, with awareness, with the chance to choose again. This journey is not a sudden transformation, but a slow unfolding, like the lotus rising from the mud. The lotus does not scorn the mud, it uses it as nourishment. Likewise, your past mistakes, your flaws, your wounds are not obstacles to self-love. They are the mud that makes your flowering possible. Without them, your compassion would not deepen, your wisdom would not mature. Loving yourself means embracing even the mud, knowing that it too is part of the path. In the stillness of night, when the world quiets and you are left alone with your thoughts, you may hear the old voices of judgment, the echo of disappointments, the fear of not being enough. Do not flee. Sit with them gently as the Buddha sat with Mara beneath the Bodhi tree. Mara came with armies of doubt, with storms of desire and fear. But the Buddha did not fight nor run. He touched the earth and said, "I see you." And in that recognition, Mara lost his power. When your critic rises, you too can bow and say, "I see you." In the light of awareness, the critic is no longer master. So tonight, let this first step be an invitation to turn inward, not as an enemy, but as a friend, to look into your own eyes and see the weary traveler who has walked so far and is still walking. Let the harshness soften, let the comparison fade, let the heart speak kindly. For every other love you will ever give or receive will be shaped by this love. The love you cultivate here, in the quiet sanctuary of your own soul. The broken relationship with oneself is not a small wound. It is the deepest fracture from which all other forms of suffering spread like cracks across a mirror. When we neglect to honor our own being, the world itself becomes distorted, because everything we perceive is filtered through that fractured lens. The Buddha taught that ignorance is the root of suffering, and self-hatred is a subtle form of ignorance. It blinds us to our own true nature, covering over our innate capacity for compassion and wisdom with layers of harsh judgment and shame. To walk the path of awakening, we must first turn the lantern inward and illuminate the shadowed places where we have abandoned ourselves. Think for a moment of how often you may have sought love from others while silently starving for love from yourself. How often have you prayed that someone else's affection would redeem you, that their attention would silence the restless voices within? Yet no matter how much is given from outside, if the inner vessel is cracked, the gift cannot stay. It leaks away, leaving emptiness behind. The Buddha likened the mind to a vessel. If it is clean, it can hold sweet nectar. But if it is poisoned by self-contempt, even nectar becomes bitter. There is a story from the Zen tradition that speaks to this truth. A monk once came to his master tormented by feelings of worthlessness. He bowed deeply and said, "Master, I am no good. My mind is noisy, my heart is restless, I am full of anger and doubt. How can I possibly walk the way?" The master looked at him gently and replied, "Who told you these things?" The monk hesitated, then admitted, "It is the voice inside me, always reminding me of my failures." The master smiled, took a deep breath, and said, "Our Mara has found a disguise." For in Buddhism, Mara represents the forces of delusion and self-sabotage, whispering that we are unworthy, that we should give up, that we will never awaken. The master's teaching was simple: do not confuse Mara's voice with your own. You are more than your doubt. This is why learning to love yourself is not vanity but liberation. It is not the creation of a false image to admire, but the peeling away of illusions so that your original face, calm, clear, compassionate, can be revealed. The Zen masters often spoke of the original face, the self before birth, the self untouched by judgment. When you sit in meditation and allow the layers of criticism and craving to fall away, even for a moment, you taste that original clarity, and in that clarity there is no brokenness. But the practice is not easy. The mind has long been trained to abandon itself. From childhood, many of us learned that love is conditional, that worth must be earned by performance, obedience, or appearance. These lessons carve deep grooves into our thinking so that as adults, we continue the pattern, demanding from ourselves perfection and punishing every imperfection. We become both the prisoner and the jailer, confining ourselves within a cage of impossible standards. The Buddha called this the cycle of samsara, the endless wheel of suffering that spins because of ignorance and craving. To step off the wheel, we must unlearn these old conditions and cultivate a new relationship, one rooted in kindness, patience, and presence. Consider how you treat others you love. When a dear friend stumbles, you do not cast them out, you help them rise. When a child cries, you do not scold the tears, you hold them until they soften. Why then do we deny ourselves the same tenderness? True self-love is extending to yourself the compassion you so readily give to others. It is recognizing that you too are a being walking the difficult road of existence, making mistakes, learning slowly, and yearning for peace. In Buddhist practice, compassion begins with oneself. The meditation of metta, or loving kindness, is often first directed inward. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be at ease. May I be happy. For many practitioners, these words are the hardest to say sincerely. The heart resists. The critic interrupts. Yet with repetition, like water smoothing a stone, the phrases begin to wear away the hardness, revealing tenderness beneath. Slowly, the relationship heals. Another teaching comes from the Buddha's own life. On the night of his enlightenment, as he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, Mara appeared with temptations, with armies of fear, with doubts about his worthiness. "Who are you?" Mara sneered, "to seek awakening? Who are you to imagine that you can be free?" In response, the Buddha did not argue, did not fight. He simply touched the earth with his right hand, calling it to bear witness to his worthiness. The earth trembled in recognition, and Mara's armies vanished. This gesture reminds us our worth is not measured by the judgments in our mind, nor by the approval of others. It is borne witness by the simple fact of being alive, of breathing, of existing in the great web of life. You need no permission to be enough. When you stop abandoning yourself, when you stop treating yourself as an enemy, something profound begins to shift. You no longer accept scraps of love from others because you are no longer starving inside. You no longer cling to toxic relationships because you do not need them to prove your value. You walk with a quiet steadiness, knowing that your worth is not negotiable. This is not arrogance, it is alignment with truth. For the Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." Let this teaching settle in your heart like a seed. Perhaps at first it feels uncomfortable, even false. That is natural. Seeds do not bloom the day they are planted. They rest in the dark soil, unseen, while roots grow silently beneath the surface. In the same way, the practice of self-love takes time. At first, it may be only small acts, choosing to speak kindly to yourself after a mistake, choosing to rest when tired, instead of pushing harshly, choosing to honor a promise you made to yourself. Each act is like a drop of water nourishing the seed. And slowly, inevitably, the seed breaks open, the stem rises, and one day you look in the mirror and no longer see an enemy but a friend. So as you lie here tonight, listening, breathing, perhaps sensing old wounds of self-judgment, I invite you to soften. You do not need to fix yourself in this moment. You do not need to prove anything. Simply notice the breath moving in and out, the steady rhythm that has carried you through every moment of your life. Let each inhale remind you that you are worthy of receiving. Let each exhale remind you that you can release the burdens you've carried too long. This is the beginning of healing the most important relationship you will ever know, the one with yourself. Self-love is often misunderstood. Many fear that to love oneself is to become arrogant, to close the doors to others, to turn inward with selfishness. Yet, the Dharma teaches us that true love for oneself is the root from which love for others naturally flows. Just as a bodhisattva vows to extend compassion to all beings, that vow begins with the being closest at hand, this fragile, breathing, imperfect self. Without compassion for yourself, compassion for others remains incomplete, like a tree trying to give shade while its own roots are starved of water. Think of self-love not as indulgence, but as survival, not as vanity, but as a standard. It is the recognition that to walk through this world with clarity and dignity, you must first set the tone for how you wish to be treated. The Buddha said, "All tremble at violence, all fear death." Comparing oneself with others, one should neither kill nor cause others to kill. In this teaching lies the seed of self-love. If you know that others deserve kindness because they tremble at suffering, then you must also know that you deserve kindness for you too tremble. Loving yourself is not different from loving others. It is simply turning the same gaze of compassion inward. Self-love means learning to have your own back when no one else does, to protect your energy when the world tries to drain it, and to believe in your worth even when surrounded by those who cannot see it. Imagine a flame within you, small, flickering, but alive. Without care, it can be extinguished by the winds of criticism, neglect, or rejection. But if you shield it, feed it with patience, protect it with boundaries, it grows into a steady light, illuminating your path and offering warmth to others. When you abandon yourself, that flame dims. When you care for yourself, it shines bright enough to guide not only you, but those around you. There is an old Zen image of a gardener who tends to her garden with great devotion. She waters not only the blossoms, but also the roots hidden beneath the earth. She does not neglect the soil, for she knows that without nourishment the flowers will wilt, no matter how radiant they appear for a day. So too must we tend to the unseen roots of our own being, our thoughts, our self-talk, our inner dignity. To neglect these roots is to decorate the garden while letting it wither from beneath. To tend them is to ensure that beauty and vitality will last through every season. Yet many of us speak to ourselves with cruelty, using words we would never direct toward a friend. We replay mistakes again and again, like a cruel storyteller reminding us of our failures. We call ourselves names, hold ourselves to impossible standards, and then wonder why our hearts grow weary. The Buddha taught that we are what we think. With our thoughts we make the world. If the thoughts you cultivate toward yourself are unkind, then your world becomes harsh and unwelcoming. But if you sow gentleness in your own heart, the world softens too, for perception and reality are deeply intertwined. You can begin to shift this simply by changing the words you use. Instead of whispering, "I cannot believe I failed again," you can say, "I am still learning, I am still growing." Instead of, "I am not good enough," you can say, "I am becoming moment by moment." Words shape the lens through which you see yourself, and over time the mind begins to believe the stories it repeats. If the story is one of failure, then life feels like failure. If the story is one of growth, then life feels like progress. But self-love does not end with gentle words. It deepens through action, through keeping promises to yourself. Imagine a friend who constantly breaks their word, who says they will come and never arrives, who promises help and never follows through. Would you trust them? Likely not. And yet, how often do we treat ourselves in the same way, making silent commitments we later abandon? We say, "I will rest," but we push until exhaustion. We say, "I will leave behind what is toxic," but we stay bound by old habits. Each broken promise chips away at the foundation of self-respect. Buddhism teaches the importance of sila, or moral discipline, not as rigid commandments, but as living promises to ourselves. When we choose to follow the precepts, to refrain from harm, to speak truthfully, to honor life, we are not pleasing an authority outside us, we are building trust within us. Each time we keep a promise, no matter how small, we strengthen our inner refuge. Waking up at the time we said we would, completing the task. We began honoring the boundaries we set. These are not trivial acts. They are stones laid one by one, building the path of confidence beneath our feet. Another dimension of self-love is time spent alone, time that is intentional rather than accidental. We live in a world where solitude is often drowned in noise, endless scrolling, constant distraction, ceaseless chatter. But the Buddha sought solitude in forests and mountains, knowing that in silence the mind reveals its true nature. To be alone is not to be lonely. It is to meet yourself without disguise. Without this meeting, you cannot claim to truly know yourself, and without knowing yourself, how can you love yourself? Take yourself on a walk without the crutch of headphones. Sit beneath a tree with only your breath for company. Eat a meal without distraction, tasting each bite as though it were the first. These small acts of solitude are invitations into your own presence. At first, discomfort may arise, for in silence we encounter the thoughts we have tried to escape. Yet only by meeting them can we understand them. And only by understanding can we release them. Self-love also requires forgiveness, for no relationship can thrive without it. If you hold on to every mistake you've made, punishing yourself with memories of failure, how can love grow? Forgiveness does not mean pretending the mistakes were acceptable. It means recognizing that they no longer need to control you. It means extracting the lesson and letting the rest fall away like a snake shedding its old skin. Every act of self-forgiveness clears space for growth. Guilt binds you to the past, but forgiveness frees you to step into the present. There is a Zen parable of two monks walking together. They came to a river and saw a woman unable to cross. One monk, breaking the rules of his order, lifted her and carried her across. Hours later, the other monk scolded him. "You touched a woman, you broke our vows." The first monk smiled and said, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" In the same way, we often carry our mistakes long after the moment has passed, burdening ourselves with what could have been. To love yourself is to finally set the burden down. As you listen tonight, reflect. What promises to yourself have you abandoned? What burdens have you carried too long? What words have you spoken inwardly that cut rather than healed? Self-love is not a destination to arrive at. It is a practice, a rhythm, a steady tending to the garden of your being. Each day offers a chance to plant a new seed of kindness, to water it with patience, to pull the weeds of old shame, and to let the sun of forgiveness shine upon it. Over time, the garden blooms, and when it blooms, you no longer chase validation, you no longer cling to what diminishes you, you no longer accept less than you deserve. You move through life with a quiet, unshakable confidence. You speak with clarity, you walk with dignity, and you no longer explain your worth to anyone, for you know it in your bones. This is the power of self-love, not to inflate the ego, but to restore the soul to its natural wholeness. Think for a moment about the weight of promises. When someone you love tells you "I will be there" and then breaks that promise again and again, trust begins to fade. Their words feel hollow, their presence uncertain, their love fragile. Over time, the bond weakens not because of a single failure, but because of the pattern of neglect. And yet, how often do we treat ourselves in the very same way? We make promises quietly within the promise to rest, the promise to care, the promise to let go of what harms us, and then we turn away, breaking those commitments as though they mattered less simply because they were made to ourselves. But here is the truth: every broken promise to yourself is a crack in the foundation of self-respect, and every kept promise is a stone that strengthens it. The Buddha often spoke of sila, or ethical discipline, not as external rules imposed by authority, but as an inner compass that aligns us with peace. Each precept, whether it is refraining from harm, speaking truthfully, or cultivating mindfulness, is a vow we make not to a god or to society, but to our own awakening heart. When we live by these precepts, we are keeping promises to ourselves. And in doing so, we learn to trust ourselves, to walk in integrity, to know that our actions and words flow in harmony. Consider how differently your heart feels when you keep even the smallest of commitments. You say you will rise at dawn and sit for 10 minutes of meditation, and you do. You say you will walk in nature, and you follow through. These moments may seem minor, but each is a whisper to your soul: "I can trust myself." Over time, these whispers accumulate, and like drops filling a jar, they create a reservoir of confidence. When the storms of doubt arrive, and they always do, you can draw upon that reservoir, remembering that you have built a history of showing up for yourself. There is a Zen story about a master who gave his disciple a dry stick and told him, "Water this every day." Confused, the disciple obeyed, carrying water up the mountain daily to pour over the lifeless wood. Others laughed at him, saying, "Why waste your time? A dead stick cannot grow." But the disciple continued day after day, keeping the promise to his teacher. After years of patient care, the stick blossomed into a flowering tree. The lesson is not that the stick was magical, but that steadfastness itself can transform what seems impossible. In the same way, when we keep our promises to ourselves, even when they appear fruitless at first, we awaken a blossoming within. The mind often resists this practice. It tells us it's only a small thing. It doesn't matter if you break it. But every small thing matters because the mind remembers. Each time you neglect yourself, the memory lingers. "I cannot trust my own word." And each time you honor yourself, the memory plants another root of confidence. The Buddha said, "Drop by drop is the water pot filled." Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills oneself with good. Self-trust is built exactly this way, drop by drop, promise by promise. Yet promises are not only about discipline, they are also about boundaries. When you say, "I will not let this toxic relationship continue to consume me," and then return to it, you fracture trust with yourself. But when you honor that boundary, even if it is painful, you reinforce the message that your peace matters. In Buddhist practice, we often speak of guarding the gates of the senses, choosing carefully what we allow into our eyes, ears, and mind. This guarding is not about fear, but about wisdom, about recognizing that the mind is shaped by what it consumes. In the same way, guarding your life with boundaries is not about selfishness, but about care, ensuring that the soil of your being remains fertile for growth. Keeping promises to yourself also means caring for your body, this temporary but sacred vessel that carries you through this life. The Buddha compared the body to a chariot. Without tending it falls apart, and the journey cannot continue. When you say, "I will rest," and you honor that rest, you are keeping a promise. When you say, "I will nourish myself," and you choose food or breath that sustains, you are keeping a promise. Each act of care is not indulgence but alignment with the truth that your life is worthy of protection. Of course, forgiveness must walk alongside discipline, for there will be days when you break your own promises, when weariness or fear causes you to fall short. In those moments, self-love means not abandoning yourself again through harsh judgment. It means acknowledging the failure, honestly learning from it, and recommitting gently. Imagine a parent teaching a child to walk. Each time the child falls, the parent does not scold. "You are hopeless." They lift the child, steady them, and encourage another step. Can you offer yourself the same patience? Each broken promise is not the end, but an invitation to begin again with more wisdom. There is another story of a monk who, in his early years of training, vowed to meditate each morning before dawn. For months he kept the vow, but one winter fatigue overcame him, and he slept through the morning bell. Ashamed, he went to his master, expecting punishment. Instead, the master poured him a bowl of warm tea and said, "The practice is not about never falling. It is about rising each time you do." In that simple act, the monk realized that compassion sustains discipline and that promises are not prisons but pathways. So let us reframe our relationship with commitments. Instead of seeing them as burdens, see them as acts of friendship with yourself. When you promise to sit in silence, you are offering yourself peace. When you promise to walk with care, you are offering yourself health. When you promise to release what harms you, you are offering yourself freedom. And each time you follow through, you deepen the most important bond you will ever have. Tonight, as you listen, ask yourself gently, what small promise can you keep tomorrow that will strengthen this bond? It does not need to be grand. Perhaps it is 10 mindful breaths upon waking. Perhaps it is one kind phrase spoken to yourself in the mirror. Perhaps it is drinking water with gratitude or pausing before sleep to forgive the day. These small promises are sacred. They are seeds of trust, and when kept, they grow into a tree of confidence under whose branches you may rest with ease. Remember that you are both the promise and the one who receives it. You are the gardener and the garden, the teacher and the student, the protector and the protected. Each act of alignment brings you closer to yourself, until one day you no longer ask, "Can I trust myself?" For you will have lived into the answer, step by step, promise by promise, drop by drop. Solitude, how often we run from it, fearing its silence as though it were an enemy waiting to swallow us whole. And yet, the path of the Buddha is filled with stories of solitude, of noble silence, of long nights under trees where no one spoke and no one came to comfort him, but the earth itself. To be alone without distraction, to sit with your own breath, your own thoughts, your own heart, that is not punishment. It is the very gateway to freedom. In our modern lives, solitude is often buried beneath layers of noise. The endless hum of devices, the chatter of voices, the scroll of images, all conspire to keep us from meeting ourselves. We fill every empty space with sound or distraction, believing that silence is unbearable. But what we truly fear is not the silence itself. It is what arises within the silence, the unspoken grief, the forgotten longing, the voice of the self we have abandoned. And so we drown it out. Yet the Dharma whispers gently, "If you wish to know peace, sit quietly and meet what is there." The Buddha called this practice noble silence, Not merely the absence of words, but the presence of awareness. When he wandered the forests of India, he would sit beneath trees in stillness, allowing the mind to settle like clear water after a storm. In that stillness he discovered that solitude is not emptiness but fullness. For when the noise of the world fades, the song of the heart can finally be heard. Think of the flame of a candle. In the wind it flickers unstable, its light uncertain. But in the shelter of still air, it burns steady and bright. Our minds are much the same. When buffeted by constant noise, they flicker with distraction and confusion. But when given the shelter of solitude, they shine with clarity. The candle does not fear stillness. It needs it to reveal its full light. Rumi, the mystic poet, once said, "Don't get lost in your loneliness, let it lead you home." This is the paradox of solitude. When we stop fearing it, it ceases to be loneliness and becomes intimacy, the deepest intimacy with our own being. Loneliness arises when we resist being with ourselves, when we crave the presence of another to fill the space. But when we soften into the moment, when we stop running, the same space becomes sacred. Solitude is the temple where we encounter our own soul. The Zen masters often taught that to know yourself you must sit still. One master said, "If you cannot sit alone for 1 hour, you will never be free." At first, this seems harsh, but the wisdom is simple. If you cannot bear your own company, you will forever depend on others to distract you from yourself. And dependence breeds suffering, for no one can always be with you. People come and go, circumstances change, but the one constant companion of your life is you. To fear that companion is to live in exile from your own home. Consider the last time you walked without distraction. No phone, no music, just your footsteps and the sound of the world. Perhaps you noticed the breeze brushing your skin, the song of a bird, the rhythm of your breath. In that moment, you were not lonely. You were present. The world was not asking you to be anyone else, to perform, to explain. It simply received you as you were. This is the gift of solitude, to be without demand, to rest in the simple truth of being. There is a Zen parable about a monk who longed for awakening. He asked his master, "What must I do to know the truth?" The master replied, "Go, sit by yourself." The monk obeyed, but soon returned restless and dissatisfied. "Master," he said, "I sat alone, but nothing happened." The master looked at him and asked, "Who is this 'nothing' who sat there?" In that question the monk glimpsed the truth. Solitude is not about waiting for something to happen. It is about meeting the one who is already there. Solitude is also the ground of self-love. For how can you love someone you do not know? And how can you know yourself if you never spend time with yourself? When you sit in silence, you meet not only your surface thoughts, but also your deeper longings, your hidden fears, your quiet strengths. You learn what nourishes you and what drains you. You discover that within the silence lies guidance, that your own heart whispers wisdom when given the chance. The Buddha called this turning the mind toward itself. But solitude is not always comfortable. At first, the mind resists, throwing up restlessness, boredom, even fear. You may feel the urge to escape, to fill the silence with noise. This is natural. The mind is like a child unused to being still. It fidgets, it complains, it demands distraction. But if you remain gentle, if you stay with your breath, the restlessness begins to settle. The child grows calm. The silence becomes a friend. And in that friendship you begin to feel whole. In Buddhist practice, solitude is not about rejecting the world, but about learning to meet it from a place of strength. When you know how to be alone without fear, you no longer cling to relationships out of desperation. You no longer seek constant validation to soothe your insecurities. You enter connections freely, not from need but from choice. This transforms love itself, for you are no longer asking others to complete you. You are already complete, and so you can love without chains. Imagine a mountain standing alone in the valley. Storms may come, winds may howl, but the mountain remains. Its solitude is not emptiness, it is strength, it is presence, it is stability. In the same way, when you learn to enjoy your own company, you become like the mountain. You remain steady even when others leave, even when life changes, even when loneliness whispers. You are no longer shaken, for you have built your home within yourself. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." Solitude is the practice of seeking within, of discovering that the treasure you search for in the world has always been waiting in the silence of your own heart. Each moment alone is an invitation to return to that treasure. You do not need to travel far to achieve much, to gather possessions. You need only to pause, to listen, to be. So tonight, as you lie here, let solitude be your companion. Feel the quiet around you not as emptiness but as presence. Let the breath remind you that you are never truly alone, for life itself breathes with you. With each inhale, receive the gift of being alive. With each exhale, release the fear of silence. Rest in the gentle truth that your own company is enough, that within you lives a friend who has waited patiently for your attention. When you learn to enjoy solitude, you will discover a freedom deeper than any external comfort. For then, whether surrounded by others or sitting alone, you remain whole. The world may come and go, but you are at home in yourself. And that is a home no storm can destroy. There can be no true love without forgiveness, and this is especially true in the relationship we have with ourselves. Many of us carry the weight of mistakes, long past, dragging them behind us, like chains, convincing ourselves that to hold on to guilt is to somehow repay the debt. Yet the Buddha's teaching is clear. Clinging to regret is like grasping a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at another. You are the one who is burned. Self-forgiveness is not about pretending that our missteps were harmless. It is about releasing the poison of guilt so that the heart may heal and grow. Think of how often you return in thought to old words you spoke in anger, to choices made in fear, to opportunities you let slip away. These memories replay like a broken song, and with each replay you renew the wound. This is the habit of the mind, turning toward suffering, as though chewing an old bone will somehow bring nourishment. The Buddha called this papanka, the tendency of the mind to proliferate, to obsess, to create endless stories from one event. In this spinning, the past remains alive not as truth, but as torment. Forgiveness is the act of stilling this wheel. A Zen story tells of two monks walking together. They came to a river where a woman stood unable to cross. One monk lifted her onto his shoulders, carried her across, and then set her down. Hours later, his companion scolded him. "We are monks, we should not have touched a woman." The first monk smiled gently and said, "I set her down by the river. Why are you still carrying her?" In the same way, we carry the mistakes of our past long after the moment has ended. We replay, we cling, we punish ourselves as though refusing to let go will change the truth. But it does not. The only thing it changes is the weight on our heart. To forgive yourself is not to erase the past, but to transform your relationship with it. Mistakes become teachers instead of jailers. Every stumble holds a lesson, and once that lesson is seen, the stumble no longer defines you. The Buddha's path is not one of perfection, but of awakening, and awakening often comes through error. If you can extend compassion to a stranger, to a friend, to a loved one, can you not extend it to yourself? Are you less deserving of kindness than they are? Often we fear that forgiveness will make us careless, that if we release guilt, we will repeat the mistake. But guilt does not prevent repetition, awareness does. Guilt is heavy, it paralyzes. Awareness is light, it guides. When you look honestly at your actions, acknowledge the harm caused and resolve to live differently, you have already planted the seed of transformation. Forgiveness waters that seed. Without forgiveness, the soil of your heart remains hard, and the seed cannot grow. The Buddha spoke often of karma, the law of cause and effect. Our actions bear fruit, and we cannot escape the results of what we have done. But karma is not a prison, it is a teacher. Each action shapes us, but each moment also offers a new choice. To forgive yourself is to recognize that you are not bound forever to a single act. You are fluid, changing, capable of growth. The river of your life flows forward, and clinging to one stone only prevents you from moving. There is a practice in Buddhism called confession, though it is different from the idea of punishment. A practitioner brings to mind the actions that caused harm, bows to them with honesty, and then releases them with the vow to walk more wisely. This is not self-condemnation, it is self-liberation. In bowing, we acknowledge we take responsibility, but we also rise lighter, for the weight has been placed down. Self-forgiveness is an act of courage. It requires us to face ourselves fully without excuse, and then to extend a hand of compassion to the very being we see. Imagine yourself as a child once more, small, tender, still learning. Would you berate that child endlessly for their mistakes? Would you demand perfection of them before granting love? Or would you guide them gently, knowing that learning requires falling, and falling requires patience? That child is still within you, waiting for your kindness. To forgive yourself is to become the parent, the teacher, the friend that child always needed. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Every mistake, every regret is a wound. But if you meet it with awareness and compassion, the wound does not remain only pain, it becomes a doorway. Through it light pours in, illuminating what was hidden. Many who have suffered deeply grow into the most compassionate beings precisely because they have forgiven themselves. They know what it is to be broken, and so they learn how to hold others with gentleness. Your mistakes forgiven can become the roots of your wisdom. There is a meditation practice for forgiveness that begins with sitting quietly, breathing deeply, and repeating silently. For the harm I have caused to myself, knowingly or unknowingly, I forgive myself. For the harsh words I have spoken to myself, I forgive myself. For the promises I have broken to myself, I forgive myself. May I be free from the prison of regret. At first, the words may feel strange, resisted by the mind. But with repetition, like drops of water on stone, they soften the heart. Forgiveness is not a single act. It is a practice, returning again and again until the heart releases. And what happens when you forgive yourself? You create space. Space for joy, for peace, for new growth. You stop defining yourself by what has already passed. You stop demanding punishment, as though suffering were proof of worthiness. You step into the present, lightened, able to love more fully. Forgiveness is not the end of responsibility. It is the beginning of true responsibility, because only when you are free from the weight of shame can you act clearly, wisely, compassionately. So tonight, reflect on what burdens you are still carrying. What words spoken long ago still echo in your mind? What decisions still sting when you remember them? Can you place them down even for this moment? Imagine yourself standing by a river, carrying stones heavy with guilt. One by one, place them into the water. Watch them sink, the ripples spreading, the current carrying them away. Your hands become lighter. Your back straightens. Your breath deepens. You are free to walk on, no longer chained. The Buddha said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." Forgiveness is the act of ceasing to dwell, ceasing to carry, and allowing yourself to stand fully in the now. The past cannot be changed, but your relationship to it can. and in that change lies your liberation. Forgive yourself not because you deserve to escape responsibility, but because you deserve to be free. Free to live, to love, to awaken. Every moment is a chance to begin again. And as long as you breathe, that chance is here. What if I told you that every moment of joy you have ever tasted, every breath of relief, every smile that rose, unbidden, was filtered through the way you see yourself? Two people may live in the same house, eat the same food, walk through the planks 5 house, same garden, yet one feels content and the other feels restless and empty. The difference is not circumstance, it is perception, and perception is shaped by how deeply we value and love ourselves. The Buddha taught that happiness is not found in possessions, status, or fleeting pleasures. He called these things like borrowed goods. They can be taken from us at any time. To build happiness upon them is to build a house upon sand. The tide will come and the house will fall. True happiness, he said, arises from the mind that is steady, from the heart that is free from clinging. And self-love, genuine and compassionate, is the foundation that steadies both mind and heart. Think of a tree standing in a storm. If its roots are shallow, the wind will topple it. But if its roots reach deep into the soil, the tree bends but does not break. Self-love is like those roots. When it is strong, you can endure loss, change, even suffering without collapsing. Without it, even joy becomes fragile. You may win praise, achieve success, fall in love, but each moment fades quickly, leaving you anxious for the next. You become like a traveler dying of thirst, drinking salt water, each sip promising relief, each sip leaving you thirstier. So many of us are taught from childhood that love must be earned, that our worth is measured by our achievements, our appearance, or how well we please others. This conditioning runs deep. It is why we chase recognition like moths toward a flame, why we feel hollow even when we seem to have it all. The Buddha called this craving tanha, the endless thirst that fuels suffering. And as long as our happiness depends on external approval, we will never be free. But self-love is like a lamp that you light within. No one else can switch it off. No criticism, no loss, no failure can fully extinguish it. It shines steadily, illuminating your path even in dark times. When you love yourself, you no longer wait for the world to give you permission to be happy. You allow happiness to arise here and now without condition. You realize that nothing outside you needs to change for you to feel whole. Consider this. Imagine two people walking in the rain. One curses the sky, feeling punished, soaked, uncomfortable. The other laughs, stretches out her hands, feels the cool drops as blessings. The rain is the same, but the experience is different because the mind interpreting it is different. Happiness too is like this. It is not the circumstance that matters most. It is the relationship you have with yourself that colors every experience. The Stoics, much like the Buddhists, knew this truth. They spoke of the inner citadel, a fortress of the soul that cannot be shaken by external events. Buddhism calls this equanimity, upekkha, the calm balance of mind that does not rise too high with praise or fall too low with blame. When you cultivate self-love, you create this inner citadel, this equanimity. Praise may come, and you smile but do not cling. Criticism may come, and you listen but do not collapse. You remain steady, rooted in the quiet knowledge that you are enough. But building this foundation requires unlearning. For years, perhaps decades, you may have measured your worth by comparison, by achievement, by meeting expectations. To reverse this is not easy. The mind protests, clings to old habits. But each moment you choose to honor yourself, to speak kindly to yourself, to forgive yourself, you are loosening the grip of conditioning. Slowly, the chains of "I am only worthy if" begin to fall away. Imagine waking each morning, and instead of asking, "Will today go perfectly so I can feel good about myself?" you whisper, "I am already worthy, and today is another chance to live that truth." Imagine sitting alone, and instead of feeling incomplete, you feel whole, savoring your own company. Imagine receiving love from others, but not depending on it for your survival, accepting it as a gift, not as air you cannot breathe without. This is freedom. This is self-love as the soil in which happiness grows. Happiness built on self-love is stable because it does not cling. You enjoy joy when it comes, but you do not fear its departure. You endure sorrow when it arises, but you do not let it define you. You walk through life with lightness like a lotus floating on water, touched by rain, by wind, by sun, but never sinking. The lotus does not depend on the weather to know its worth. It blooms simply because it is its nature to bloom. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition about a monk who was asked why he smiled so often. He replied, "Because I have stopped asking the world to make me happy. I carry my own sunlight." That sunlight is self-love. Without it, we are always at the mercy of clouds, waiting for external skies to clear. With it, we realize the light has been within all along. Of course, this does not mean withdrawing from the world or rejecting relationships. On the contrary, when you are rooted in self-love, your relationships flourish. You no longer enter them from desperation, trying to fill a void. You enter them from fullness, able to give without losing yourself, able to receive without clinging. You can love freely because you are not afraid of being empty without another. Work too changes. When you love yourself, you no longer chase recognition, desperate for applause. You choose work that aligns with your values, that expresses your gifts. And even if no one notices, the act itself is fulfilling because it is rooted in integrity. Free time becomes richer too. Instead of trying to escape yourself through endless distractions, you savor your own presence, finding joy in simple moments. The Buddha compared the mind to a garden. Without self-love, it is like planting flowers in poisoned soil. They may bloom briefly, but they cannot last. With self-love, the soil becomes fertile, rich, sustaining. Joy planted there grows strong and resilient. It weathers droughts and storms because its roots are nourished. So tonight, reflect. What have you been building your happiness upon? External approval, achievements, possessions, or upon the steady foundation of compassion for yourself? Ask yourself gently, if all the external lights went dark, could I still carry my own sunlight? If the answer feels uncertain, do not despair. It only means you are human, still learning, still becoming. And every breath you take is an opportunity to begin cultivating that inner light. Start small. Speak kindly to yourself in the mirror. Rest without guilt. Say no when you need to. Protect your energy. Honor your needs. Each act is a seed of self-love, and each seed strengthens the ground beneath you until happiness is no longer something you chase, but something you live. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." Self-love is the doorway to that peace. And once you step through, you will find that happiness has been waiting all along, like a gentle friend, sitting patiently within your heart, ready to walk with you wherever you go. From the time we are children, we are told who we should be. We are praised when we perform well, when we fit into the patterns others expect of us, when we appear pleasing in the eyes of family, teachers, or society. And when we falter, when we show our true nature, when we stumble outside the lines, the praise fades and sometimes turns to judgment. Slowly, almost without noticing, we begin to weave our identity from these external threads. We start to believe, I am worthy only if I succeed. I am lovable only if I please. I am valuable only if I meet expectations. And in doing so, we abandon our true self, and live instead in a costume stitched together by the opinions of others. The Buddha called this ignorance avidya, not seeing things as they truly are. When we identify with this conditioned self, this false self, we suffer because it is never stable. It shifts with every praise and every criticism. One moment we feel proud because someone admired us. The next we collapse because someone disapproved. We become like a puppet pulled by strings. We cannot see our joy and sorrow determined by the hands of others. And so the cycle of suffering spins samsara, fueled by craving and aversion. Think of the painted rice cake, a classic Zen metaphor. To the eye, it may appear nourishing, beautiful even. But no matter how vivid its colors, it cannot satisfy hunger. In the same way, the false self we present to the world, the mask of achievement appearance, approval may appear convincing, but it does not nourish the soul. We may receive applause, but the hunger for real worth remains. Only the true self, free from masks, can feed us. Yet breaking free from this conditioning is not simple. The grooves have been carved deeply by years of repetition. Each time you compared yourself to another, each time you dismissed your own longing to meet someone else's expectation, the groove deepened. The good news is that grooves, though deep, are not permanent. They can be softened, filled, and replaced by new paths. This is the power of practice of mindfulness, of choosing again and again to turn inward rather than outward for your sense of worth. Pause for a moment and reflect. Whose approval are you still chasing? A parent long gone but whose voice still echoes? A teacher who once doubted you? A society that tells you you are never enough until you own more? Look, younger, accomplish greater things. Notice how these voices are not your own. They are ghosts, projections, echoes of a conditioning you never chose. The Buddha invites us to see through these illusions, to see that the self created by craving and comparison is not who we truly are. True self-love begins when you stop measuring your worth by these external standards and instead recognize your inherent dignity as a human being, a precious and rare birth. In Buddhist thought, to be born as a human with awareness is an extraordinary gift, rarer than a turtle surfacing in a vast ocean and placing its head through a single ring floating upon the waves. This precious human life is already worthy, already valuable before any achievement, before any performance. You do not need to earn your right to exist. It is given by the miracle of being here at all. There is a Zen story of a monk who asked his master, "What is my true self?" The master said nothing, but instead pointed to the simple act of the monk breathing. "There," he said, "in your breath, in your being, it is already complete." The lesson is clear. Your worth is not hidden in some distant achievement. It is present in the most ordinary truth of your life, that you breathe, you exist, you are. When we cling to the false self, happiness is always postponed. We say, "I will love myself when I lose the weight, when I earn the promotion, when I find the perfect partner." But when those things come, the goalpost shifts again. There is always another condition, another standard to meet. This is the trap of craving. It promises satisfaction in the future while ensuring you never arrive. The Buddha described it as a thirst that can never be quenched by drinking. The more you chase, the more you thirst. To break free, we must return to the present and learn to love ourselves here and now, in imperfection, in becoming. This does not mean abandoning growth, but rather shifting the ground of growth from self-rejection to self-respect. Growth that arises from shame is brittle. It collapses under pressure. Growth that arises from love is resilient. It bends without breaking. Consider the lotus again. It blooms from mud, not from crystal water. Its beauty is not in spite of the mud, but because of it. In the same way, your imperfections, your mistakes, your struggles are not proof that you are unworthy. They are the mud from which your compassion and wisdom grow. The false self hides the mud in shame, pretending to be flawless. The true self embraces the mud, knowing it is the source of flowering. Lao Tzu wrote, "Care about people's approval, and you will be their prisoner." How true this is. As long as your worth depends on others, you are imprisoned. Every compliment becomes a key that lifts you up. Every criticism becomes a chain that drags you down. But when you rest in your own self-love, you are free. Approval becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Disapproval becomes uncomfortable but survivable. You no longer live as a prisoner. You live as one who has returned home. The practice to begin dissolving the false self is mindfulness. Sit quietly, notice the thoughts that arise and gently ask, whose voice is this? Is this my true heart or an echo of old conditioning? When you hear the thought, "I must achieve more to be valuable," recognize it as conditioning, not truth. When you hear, "I am unlovable as I am," see it as an echo, not a reality. Let the thoughts pass like clouds and return to the vast sky of your being that remains untouched. Another practice is metta-loving-kindness meditation. Begin with yourself. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be at ease. May I be happy. At first, the words may feel hollow, resisted by the false self that says, "You do not deserve them." But repeat them gently again and again. Over time, the words seep into the cracks of the false self, softening it until the true self shines through. As you lie here tonight, notice the ways you may have been living through a mask. Notice how heavy it feels to perform endlessly, to seek approval, to chase worth. Imagine setting that mask down beside you. Beneath it, your face is tender, imperfect, human, and beautiful. You do not need to perform for this moment. You do not need to be anyone else. You need only to rest in the truth of being. Remember this: the painted rice cake cannot feed you, but the true self can. The applause of the world may lift you for a moment, but only your own compassion can sustain you. The false self will always be hungry. The true self already knows fullness. And when you live from that place, happiness is no longer fragile. It does not depend on conditions. It arises naturally like a spring bubbling from the earth, clear, cool, and constant. Boundaries. How heavy the word can feel, as though it were a wall meant to keep others away, a closing of the heart, a rejection of love. Yet in truth, boundaries are not walls at all. They are doors. Doors that you, and only you, have the right to open and close. They are not built to push people out, but to let relationships flow in healthy ways, to ensure that your inner garden is not trampled by careless feet. Without them, life becomes chaotic, your energy scattered, your identity blurred. With them, life becomes ordered, your spirit protected, and your love more authentic. So many of us have been taught that to put ourselves first is selfish, that to say no is to disappoint, that to rest is to be lazy. And so we give and give, believing that endless sacrifice makes us good. But sacrifice without wisdom does not create love. It creates exhaustion. The Buddha spoke of the middle way, avoiding extremes of indulgence and denial. In the same way, compassion without boundaries becomes indulgence of others at the expense of yourself, while rigid isolation becomes denial of connection. The middle way here is balance, giving freely, but only from a full heart, serving others without abandoning yourself. Think of a lamp. Its flame offers light to all around, yet the lamp itself must remain protected. If the oil runs out, the flame dies. If the wind is not shielded, the flame flickers and fades. Boundaries are the lamp's glass, the structure that allows the flame to continue shining. Without them, the light cannot last. In the same way, your energy, your peace, your presence must be guarded if you wish to keep offering them to the world. The Buddha himself demonstrated boundaries in his teaching. There is a story of a man who came to him full of anger, hurling insults. The Buddha listened quietly and then asked, "If a man brings a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man replied, "It remains with the giver." The Buddha said, "So it is with your anger. I do not accept it. It remains with you." This is a boundary, not a wall of hostility, but a door closed to harm. The Buddha did not absorb the man's anger, nor did he retaliate. He simply refused to take in what was not his. We often think that setting a boundary means we are unkind. But the opposite is true. Boundaries are acts of kindness, first to ourselves and then to others. They prevent us from becoming resentful, from giving more than we have, from allowing unhealthy patterns to poison love. Without boundaries, even generosity turns sour. With boundaries, generosity remains pure. Consider the friend who is always available, no matter the hour, no matter the request. At first, others admire their devotion, but over time, the constant availability becomes taken for granted. Their presence loses value because it is never balanced by absence. They grow weary, yet they cannot say no. Eventually, their giving becomes resentment, their love becomes obligation. This is what happens when we live without boundaries. We lose not only our energy but also the joy of giving. Boundaries are not about punishing others. They are about teaching others how to treat you. When you say no to what drains you, you are saying yes to your peace, yes to your health, yes to the authentic connections that truly matter. The discomfort you feel when setting a boundary is not evidence that you are wrong. It is evidence that you are breaking an old pattern of self-abandonment. Like a tree adjusting to new growth, it feels strange at first, but with time, it becomes natural. In Buddhist practice, we are taught to protect the mind as we would guard a city gate. Imagine your mind as a sacred city. Would you let anyone walk in unchecked, carrying weapons, spreading chaos? Of course not. You would welcome guests with goodwill, but also discernment, allowing in those who bring peace and turning away those who bring harm. Boundaries are this discernment in daily life. They ensure that what enters your heart, your time, your space is aligned with your well-being. Practical boundaries can be gentle, yet firm. Perhaps it means not answering messages late at night so that you can rest. Perhaps it means saying no to an event that would drain you rather than nourish you. Perhaps it means refusing to engage in conversations that spread anger or gossip. These are not acts of rejection. They are acts of alignment, of choosing what sustains rather than what depletes. Of course, setting boundaries often disappoints others. Some will call you selfish. Some will try to guilt you back into old patterns. But here is the truth. Those who truly love you will respect your boundaries because they will see that your boundaries allow you to show up whole, not broken. Those who cannot respect them may fall away, and though their absence may sting, it creates space for healthier connections. The Buddha reminded us that clinging leads to suffering. This includes clinging to relationships that demand we abandon ourselves. Remember too that boundaries protect your identity. Without them, you say yes to so many things you do not want that your life begins to feel like it belongs to others. You lose touch with your own path, your own calling. And when you lose yourself, self-love becomes impossible. You cannot love a self that you are constantly betraying. But with boundaries you affirm, my peace matters. My path matters. My life is my own. There is a parable of a wise woman who carried water each day in 2 pots, one whole and one cracked. The cracked pot leaked, and she felt ashamed. But the woman planted seeds along the path of the cracked pot, and each day the leaking water nourished them. Soon the path bloomed with flowers. The woman said, "Your cracks brought beauty." In the same way, your boundaries are not signs of weakness but of wisdom. They may disappoint some, but they create beauty, health, and peace in your life. So tonight, reflect gently. Where in your life do you need a boundary? Where are you saying yes when every part of you whispers no? Where are you allowing others to trample your garden, leaving you weary and resentful? Boundaries begin with awareness. Name them silently and imagine building a gentle gate around your heart, not locked, not barred, but with doors you can open and close. Feel the relief that comes with knowing you are allowed to protect yourself. Boundaries are not the end of love. They are the beginning of authentic love. Love that is chosen, balanced, sustainable. They say, I value myself enough to protect what matters. And when you live in this way, you do not close yourself off from others. You simply ensure that when you open the door, it is from a place of fullness, not depletion. The Buddha's teaching on compassion always included wisdom. Boundaries are that wisdom in action. When was the last time you said no, not with apology, not with a string of excuses, not with guilt weighing heavy on your chest, but with clarity, with calm, with the simple dignity of knowing that your time, your peace, your energy are sacred for many? That moment is rare. We live in a culture that celebrates busyness, that equates constant availability with value, that whispers that our worth is measured by how much we do for others, how many obligations we can carry, how often we say yes. Yet the Buddha taught that the greatest treasure we have is not wealth, not recognition, not even health, but this precious human life, this energy of awareness flowing through us. And what is life, if not energy? If we squander it on every request, if we spend it recklessly, then what remains to walk the path of awakening? Saying no is not an act of rejection, it is an act of protection. Each time you say yes to something that depletes you, you are in truth saying no to yourself. And over time, those small betrayals accumulate. Your energy drains, your body grows weary, your spirit grows resentful. You find yourself burned out, not because life demanded too much, but because you offered yourself too little. The Buddha likened energy virya to a flame that must be guarded carefully. Without fuel, the flame dies. Without protection, it is blown out. To protect your energy, you must learn when to close the door, when to decline, when to honor the sacredness of your own life force. Think of your energy as a bank account. Each commitment, each conversation, each responsibility is a withdrawal. Some withdrawals are worthy, they feed your growth, they nurture your relationships, they serve your values, but many are not. If you say yes to every request, no matter how small, you run into emotional bankruptcy. And bankruptcy does not only mean emptiness, it means collapse, burnout, illness, loss of joy. Your body whispers when you give too much: fatigue, tension, anxiety. If you ignore these whispers, they become cries, and if you ignore the cries, they become illness. The wise practitioner learns to listen early and to guard energy as though it were gold. There is a teaching from the Stoics that mirrors this wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote of the inner citadel, the fortress of the soul that must be guarded. Not every invitation is worth accepting, not every battle is worth fighting. The Buddha too spoke of guarding the gates of the senses, of choosing carefully what we allow into our minds and hearts. Saying no is one of the ways we guard those gates. It is like closing the door of your temple at night, not out of fear but out of reverence for what is inside. Yet for many of us, saying no feels unbearable. We imagine that others will call us selfish, unkind, uncaring. We fear being seen as difficult, as less valuable. This is the conditioning of craving for approval, the same conditioning that binds us to the false self. But here is the truth: those who truly respect you will also respect your no. Those who benefit only from your lack of boundaries will resist it, perhaps even punish it. Their resistance is not a sign that you are wrong. It is proof that the no was necessary. Consider this simple reflection: when you say yes to one thing, you are always saying no to something else. If you say yes to an obligation that drains you, you are saying no to rest, no to creativity, no to presence with those you love, no to your own practice of peace. To say yes to everything is to live in constant betrayal of what matters most. The Buddha called this heedlessness, a life lived without discernment, scattered and restless. The path of awakening is the path of heedfulness, choosing each step with awareness. Sometimes that step is no. A Zen story tells of a student who asked his master, "How can I protect my energy when the world asks so much of me?" The master pointed to a tree outside. When the wind blows, the tree bends. But does it bend to every direction at once? The student shook his head. "Number, it bends where the roots allow." The master nodded. "So must you bend only where your roots are strong. Say no where they are not." At first, saying no feels uncomfortable, even frightening. You may feel guilt, the old conditioning rising, but that discomfort is not proof you are wrong. It is the ache of breaking an old pattern. The first time a tree grows a new branch, it creaks, it strains. But in time, the branch becomes strong, natural part of its very being. So it is with no. With practice, it becomes a natural expression of self-love, not a rebellion against it. How do you begin? Start small. Before you say yes, pause. Ask yourself, does this align with my values? Will this nourish or drain me? If I say yes to this, what am I saying no to in return? If the answer reveals depletion, then no is the path of wisdom. Speak it gently, without apology, without excuse. Simply, "I cannot." Or, "This is not possible for me right now." The words may tremble at first, but over time they will steady. Remember too that saying no is not shutting the world out. It is creating space for the yes that truly matters. When you say no to endless obligations, you say yes to your body's need for rest. When you say no to gossip, you say yes to peace of mind. When you say no to toxic patterns, you say yes to freedom. Every no carries within it a deeper yes. There is also a profound spiritual truth in this. In Buddhist practice, renunciation is often misunderstood as rejection of life. But renunciation is not about denial for its own sake. It is about saying no to what binds us so that we can say yes to liberation. When the Buddha renounced his palace life, he was not rejecting beauty, but the chains of attachment that kept him from awakening. Each no he spoke was a yes to freedom. When you say no to what drains your energy, you are following the same principle, renouncing the unnecessary so that the essential can shine. So tonight, let us practice. Imagine your life force as a bowl of clear water. Each time you say yes without care, a hole is poked in the bowl and the water leaks away. Imagine now placing your hand over those holes gently but firmly. Each no you speak seals a leak. The water begins to fill again, shimmering abundant. You lift the bowl and it is heavy with life. From this fullness you can pour freely, giving to others without fear of emptiness. The Buddha said, "If you do not care for yourself, who will?" This was not a command of selfishness, but a reminder of responsibility. Your energy, your peace, your life are precious. To squander them is to abandon yourself. To guard them is to honor the gift of existence. So let the word no become a part of your practice, not as a shield of fear, but as a vow of love. Each time you speak it with clarity, you are saying, "I value my life. I protect my energy. I choose to live with wisdom." And from that place, every yes you do speak will be radiant, sincere, and full of life. How many times have you remained in someone's life long after their presence stopped nourishing you? How many times have you excused neglect, endured disrespect, or convinced yourself that if you just gave more, waited longer, or became better, they would change? Letting go of those who do not value us is among the hardest lessons, not because we cannot see the truth, but because our hearts cling to the memory of who they once were, to the promise of what they could become, to the moments when we felt seen. Yet the Buddha reminds us that all things are impermanent. Relationships like seasons bloom and fade. To cling to what has passed is to suffer. To let go is to open the hands and allow life to flow again. The truth is that you cannot truly love yourself if you continue to invest in those who consistently show you that they do not value you. Love is not proven by tolerating mistreatment. Respect is not earned by shrinking yourself to fit another's comfort. The Buddha taught that clinging to what causes suffering is like grasping a red-hot coal you hope to hold on to warmth, but instead you burn. Many of us cling not to the person as they are, but to an image of who they once were or who we dream they could become. But this clinging only prolongs pain, keeping us stuck in a story that no longer matches reality. Think of a tree in winter. Its leaves have fallen, its branches bare. To stand beneath it and demand blossoms is to live in illusion. The tree cannot bloom out of season. In the same way, to wait endlessly for someone to become who they are not willing to be is to deny the truth of impermanence. Love is a living thing. If it is not nourished, it fades. If it is not honored, it withers. To let go is not to deny love, but to accept that it has run its course. There is a teaching from Epictetus echoed in the Dharma that suffering comes not from what happens, but from our attachment to it. We suffer not because someone leaves, but because we refuse to release them in our hearts. We replay their words, their absence, their betrayals, as though clinging to the memory will make it different. But reality is reality. The Buddha said, "Better it is to live alone. There is no companionship with a fool." Live alone and do no evil at ease like the elephant in the forest. This does not mean rejecting people harshly, but it means choosing wisely, letting go when presence turns to poison. When someone truly values you, you do not have to beg for their attention. You do not have to decode their silences or shrink yourself to be accepted. Their love flows consistently like a steady stream. Anything less is not love. It is attachment, convenience, habit, or control. When you continue to hold on to those who do not value you, you are in truth devaluing yourself. You are saying, "Your presence, even in its neglect, is worth more than my peace." But self-love whispers otherwise. My peace is sacred. My worth is not negotiable. I do not need to hold on to what diminishes me. Letting go is not an act of anger or revenge. It is an act of compassion for yourself and even for the other. By releasing them, you free both of you from a bond that no longer serves. You create space for relationships that uplift, for friendships that nourish, for love that is reciprocal and real. And though there may be emptiness at first, a silence where their chaos used to be, within that silence, something beautiful emerges. You begin to hear yourself again. There is a Zen parable of a student who clung to an old cup, cracked and leaking. He refused to part with it, saying, "This cup once held the sweetest tea." The master finally said, "Yes, but now it holds only loss. Set it down, and your hands will be free to receive a new cup, one that can hold tea again." In the same way, letting go of those who do not value you frees your hands, your heart, your life to receive something new. Practically letting go is not only physical distance, it is emotional detachment. It is choosing not to replay old conversations, not to stalk their presence in your mind or in the world, not to rewrite history to make them better than they were. It is facing reality with courage. They are who they are. I release them. At first, the mind resists, weaving fantasies of what could be, clinging to nostalgia. But with each moment of awareness, each breath of release, the bond loosens. One day you wake, and their presence no longer grips your heart. You remember them, but without longing, without bitterness. You are free. This freedom does not mean you did not love. You can honor what was beautiful without denying what was harmful. You can be grateful for lessons learned while also recognizing that the season has ended. The Buddha compared clinging to holding a rope that burns your hands. To continue holding is to deepen the wound. To let go is to allow healing. And what happens when you let go? You reclaim your energy. You stop living in reaction to someone else's moods, words, and actions. You discover new friendships, new experiences, new joys that were hidden while your gaze was fixed backward. Most importantly, you rebuild your relationship with yourself. You realize that your worth does not depend on being chosen by someone else. It depends only on the fact that you exist, that you are alive, that you are part of this vast miraculous web of being. The Buddha said, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. To let go of those who do not value you is to live gracefully. It is to stop pouring water into a vessel full of holes. It is to water instead the seeds of your own joy, your own peace, your own awakening. So tonight reflect. Whom are you still holding on to in your heart, even though their actions have shown they do not hold you with the same care? What would it feel like to loosen your grip, to set down the cracked cup, to release the rope that burns? Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a river, carrying heavy stones of attachment. One by one, place the stones into the flowing water. Watch as the current carries them away. Feel your hands lighter, your shoulders freer, your breath deeper. In that letting go, you do not lose yourself, you find yourself again. And when new relationships come, as they will, you will greet them not from desperation, but from wholeness. You will not beg for crumbs of attention, for you will know you are already nourished within. You will not fear being left for. You will know you can stand steady on your own. You will choose with wisdom, with compassion, with clarity. And those who value you will recognize in your steadiness a worth that needs no proof. Letting go is not weakness, it is strength. It is saying, I refuse to settle for being an option when I know I am a priority. It is choosing peace over chaos, truth over fantasy, reality over illusion. It may ache at first, but the ache is temporary while the freedom is lasting. Remember, some people are chapters, not the whole story. Holding them beyond their time does not keep the story alive. It keeps you stuck. Letting go allows the next chapter to unfold, the one where you walk lighter, freer, more aligned with the truth of your worth. There is a voice within you that speaks more often than any other. A voice so constant that you may no longer notice its presence, and yet it shapes the way you see yourself, the way you walk through the world, the way you dream or hesitate to dream. This is the inner critic. Sometimes it shouts in anger, sometimes it whispers with subtle cruelty, but its message is always the same. You are not enough. It reminds you of your failures, predicts your future disappointments, and insists that your worth is conditional. Of all the voices you will encounter in this lifetime, this one has the greatest power to harm, for it lives not outside, but within, and when believed, it becomes the lens through which you view everything. The Buddha taught that with our thoughts we make the world. The inner critic is nothing more than a collection of thoughts, yet when we accept its words without question, it paints our entire world in shades of doubt and fear. This critic often disguises itself as reason, as caution, as practicality. It says, be realistic, don't embarrass yourself, don't reach too high. But beneath its mask lies fear, fear of change, fear of failure, fear of stepping into the unknown. It seeks to keep you small, trapped within the walls of your comfort zone. And while it may protect you from risk, it also robs you of growth, of possibility, of freedom. To silence this critic does not mean to destroy it or pretend it does not exist. In fact, resistance often strengthens it. Instead, the practice is to see it clearly, to recognize its voice as just that, a voice, not the truth. The Buddha compared thoughts to clouds drifting across the sky. They arise, they change, they pass. The sky itself is vast, untouched by the movement of clouds. In the same way, you are not your thoughts. You are the sky, spacious, unbroken, luminous. The critic may appear, but you need not grasp it, need not define yourself by it. You can simply watch it come and go. There is a Zen teaching. Do not believe everything you think. Just because a thought arises does not mean it is reality. When the critic says, "You are unworthy," pause and ask, "Is this true? Where is the proof? Or is this simply fear speaking?" More often than not, the critic's voice collapses under the weight of inquiry. It is like a shadow, frightening in form, but, when examined, revealed to be only the absence of light. Sometimes, the inner critic borrows its tone from voices of the past. Perhaps it echoes a parent's harsh words, a teacher's doubt, a wound from long ago. It is important to remember, just because the critic sounds familiar does not make it true. It is a learned voice, not your essence. When you see its origin, you stop taking it so personally. You recognize it for what it is, a pattern, not a destiny. Self-love plays a crucial role here. When you value yourself deeply, you refuse to tolerate cruelty, even from your own mind. You begin to replace the inner critic with an inner teacher, an inner friend. The teacher still points out where you can grow, but with patience rather than shame. The friend still challenges you, but with encouragement rather than mockery. This transformation is not instant, but it begins the moment you decide that you deserve kindness even from yourself. Consider the difference in these words, "I cannot do this," versus "I do not yet know how to do this, but I can learn." One closes the door, the other opens it. One chains you to the present moment, the other invites growth. The critic limits, the compassionate teacher expands. Which voice will you choose to cultivate? There is a story told of a young monk who struggled with meditation. Each day his mind wandered, and each day he scolded himself. "You are terrible at this. You will never awaken." Finally, he confessed his frustration to his master. The master listened quietly and then said, "If you had a child learning to walk and he stumbled, would you strike him and say, 'You are hopeless'? Or would you encourage him gently to try again?" The monk bowed his head ashamed. "Then why," asked the master, "do you treat your own mind with less kindness than you would a child?" This is the heart of the practice, to meet the critic with compassion, not hostility. When the critic arises, acknowledge it gently. "Ah, Mara, I see you." Just as the Buddha did when temptation and fear arose under the Bodhi tree. He did not banish Mara, he recognized him. And in that recognition, Mara lost his power. When you name the critic, when you see it clearly, you no longer mistake it for truth. Practical tools can help as well. Journaling your thoughts allows you to see the critic on paper, where its repetition and exaggeration become obvious. Practicing mindfulness helps you catch the critic in the very moment it arises, giving you the choice to release it instead of believing it. Surrounding yourself with voices of encouragement, friends, teachers, wise teachings, begins to balance the scale until the critic's voice is no longer the loudest in the room of your mind. And most importantly, action silences the critic more effectively than argument. Each time you act despite its warnings, you prove it wrong. The critic says, "You cannot," and you do. The critic says, "You will fail," and even if you stumble, you rise, and in rising, you demonstrate resilience. Over time, the critic grows quieter, its authority weakened by the evidence of your life. Still know this, the critic may never disappear completely. It is part of being human, part of the mind's attempt to protect you from risk. But it can be trained, softened, reduced to background noise rather than the commanding voice. You may never eliminate the clouds, but you can remember that you are the sky. Tonight as you rest, notice the voice that speaks within. Does it scold? Does it doubt? Does it replay old regrets? Instead of fighting it, listen with awareness. Thank it for trying to protect you, but remind it gently that you are safe, that you are learning, that you are growing. Replace its harsh words with words of compassion. I am capable. I am worthy. I am becoming. Imagine your heart as a great bell, and each kind word as a strike upon it, sending waves of resonance through your entire being. In this way, the critic is no longer your enemy, but your teacher. It shows you where you most need compassion, where your wounds still ache, where your growth is waiting. By meeting it with mindfulness and love, you transform its presence from obstacle into doorway. The Buddha taught that obstacles are not barriers to the path, they are the path. Your critic, too, can become a guide if you learn to listen without believing to see, without clinging to hold, without being consumed. Remember, you are not your critic. You are the awareness that hears it, the spaciousness that contains it, the compassion that transforms it. And when you live from that awareness, the critic loses its power. You walk with greater freedom, greater confidence, greater peace. Confidence is often imagined as something others are born with, a natural gift, a mysterious quality that some seem to carry effortlessly. But the truth, as the Dharma reveals, is simpler and far more empowering. Confidence is not a gift, it is a practice. It is not stumbled upon one day fully formed. It is built moment by moment, choice by choice, promise by promise, until it becomes a steady flame within you. The Buddha taught that everything arises from causes and conditions. Nothing appears without roots. Just as a tree grows strong, not because of a single drop of rain, but through steady nourishment over time, so too does confidence grow through repeated action, through the accumulation of small choices that reinforce trust in yourself. Confidence is the fruit of karma, the result of what you do consistently, not what you merely dream of or wait for. Too often people wait to act until they feel confident. They say, "When I feel ready, I will try. When I believe in myself, then I will take the step." But the path works in reverse. It is action that generates confidence. Each time you act, even in fear, even with trembling hands, you cast a vote for your own capability. You tell your mind, "See, I can do this." And over time, those votes accumulate into a new identity, not one who doubts, but one who does. Imagine a jar being filled with drops of water. Each drop is a small action waking. When you promise to wake, keeping a commitment, speaking kindly to yourself, practicing even when it feels inconvenient. At first, the jar seems empty, and you may despair. But if you keep adding drops, one day, you look and realize the jar is full. Confidence is the same. Each action you keep is a drop. The critic may say, "It is not enough," but with patience, you will see that small acts build unshakable trust. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." The Buddha might have said something similar when he advised his monks not to seek approval from the world, but to measure their practice by their own integrity. Confidence does not come from appearing flawless in the eyes of others. It comes from knowing in the quiet of your own heart that you are living in alignment with your values. To wait until the world approves is to remain forever uncertain. To act with integrity, regardless of how you are seen, is to build the only confidence that lasts. Consider failure. So many believe that failure is the enemy of confidence, that stumbling proves inadequacy. But the Dharma teaches otherwise. Failure is not an ending, but a teacher. Each time you fall and rise again, you reinforce resilience. Each time you face disappointment and continue forward, you strengthen the root of trust in yourself. The Buddha himself did not awaken on his first attempt at meditation. He tried many paths, endured hardship, fell into extremes of denial and indulgence before discovering the middle way. His confidence was not born from instant success, but from persistence, from the willingness to rise again after each misstep. Think of confidence as a muscle. If you never exercise it, it remains weak. If you wait to lift the weight until you already feel strong, you will never begin. But if you lift gently, consistently, the muscle grows. At first, the progress is invisible, but in time you look back and realize that what once felt impossible is now effortless. Confidence, too, is trained. Each act of courage, no matter how small, is a repetition that strengthens you. There is a Zen story of a young monk who doubted his ability to practice. Each morning he swept the temple floor but felt it meaningless. Finally, he asked his master, "How will sweeping the same floor every day ever lead to awakening?" The master replied, "Each sweep removes a speck of dust. The floor becomes clear, not all at once but through repetition. So it is with your heart. Each act, no matter how small, removes doubt." The monk realized that confidence is not sudden but cumulative. To build confidence, begin with small promises you can keep. If you have broken trust with yourself in the past, do not demand grand gestures immediately. Start with what is possible: 10 minutes of meditation, a single walk in nature, one kind word spoken to yourself. Each time you keep the promise, you place another stone in the foundation of self-belief. Slowly, you can increase the weight. But the strength comes not from size, but from consistency. The Buddha said, "Little by little a person becomes good, as a water pot is filled with drops of water." Let this teaching guide you. Confidence is not built by one grand success, but by 1,000 small drops of integrity. And because it is built this way, it cannot be taken easily. It is woven into your being through repetition. Another aspect of confidence is where you place your focus. If you measure yourself by external applause, your confidence will rise and fall like the stock market, dependent on forces beyond your control. But if you measure yourself by your own integrity, did I do what I said I would do? Did I live by my values today? Then confidence becomes steady, unshakable. The Buddha warned against seeking refuge in what is impermanent. Applause, recognition, approval, all are impermanent. Integrity, however, becomes a refuge because it rests within your control. Rumi wrote, "As you start to walk on the way appears." This is also true of confidence. You do not wait for the way to appear before stepping. You step, and in stepping the way is revealed. Each action reveals more of your own strength. Each choice builds the road beneath your feet. So tonight, reflect: what small action have you been postponing because you do not feel ready? What step have you delayed because your critic whispers, "Not yet"? Imagine yourself taking that step anyway, with fear, with trembling, but also with courage. Imagine the strength that will arise. The moment you act, the quiet voice within that will whisper, "See, you can." Confidence is not arrogance. It is not pretending to know what you do not. It is the humble knowledge that you can trust yourself to show up, to act, to persist. It is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to walk with fear. It is not perfection, but perseverance. And when you cultivate it, you discover a strength that no one else can give or take away. Remember, you do not need to feel confident to begin. You need only to begin, and confidence will follow. Like a shadow, it may not appear immediately, but it will come step by step as you continue walking. So much of our suffering comes from the belief that caring for ourselves is selfish, that rest must be earned, that peace is a luxury, that tending to our own needs is indulgence rather than necessity. But in the teachings of the Buddha, caring for body and mind is not selfishness, it is wisdom. The body is the vehicle of awakening the mind, the ground upon which freedom is cultivated. To neglect them is to weaken the very foundation of your path. To care for them is not vanity. It is a declaration, I am worthy of tenderness, of balance, of peace. Self-care is often misunderstood as an escape, a fleeting pleasure, an hour in a spa, a treat after a hard day. But in its deepest form, self-care is not about luxury. It is about alignment. It is about choosing day by day to live in ways that honor the sacredness of your being. When you nourish yourself, you do not take from others, you replenish the source from which your love and service flow. A parched well cannot offer water. A weary spirit cannot give peace. When you care for yourself, you make your compassion sustainable. The Buddha spoke often of mindfulness of the body. He instructed his disciples to be aware of the body, walking, standing, sitting, lying down, to be present with its sensations, its needs, its limits. This was not to encourage indulgence, but to foster respect. The body is impermanent, fragile, subject to sickness, aging, and death. Yet while you inhabit it, it is your companion, your tool, your home. To neglect it, to abuse it with overwork, poor nourishment, or relentless stress is to forget its preciousness. To care for it with mindfulness, rest, movement, and breath is to honor the gift of human life. Think of a gardener. She tends to her plants not because she is selfish, but because without care the plants will wither. She waters, she prunes, she nourishes the soil. In the same way, you are the gardener of your own being. Neglect does not make you strong, it makes you brittle. Care does not make you weak, it allows you to bloom. There is a Zen story of a monk who worked tirelessly, neglecting food and rest in his devotion to practice. His master watched quietly, then one day approached him with a broken bow. "Why will this bow not play music?" the master asked. The monk replied, "Because it is broken." The master nodded. "And why is it broken?" The monk answered, "Because it was stretched too tightly." The master smiled gently. "And so it is with you. Practice without care is no practice at all. Self-care is balance. It is the middle way between indulgence and denial. Too much denial, and you burn out. Too much indulgence, and you lose discipline. But when you care with wisdom, you find the balance point, enough rest to renew, enough discipline to grow. Self-care is also listening. Listening to the whispers of your body before they become cries. Listening to the quiet needs of your spirit before they erupt in despair. How often do we ignore these whispers, pushing ourselves harder, silencing our fatigue with caffeine, numbing our restlessness with distractions? Yet the body always speaks, the mind always signals. To listen is to love. Consider also the mind's care. Just as the body requires rest, the mind requires stillness. In our world of constant noise, the mind is bombarded with stimulation, news, messages, tasks, endless demands. Without care, it becomes restless, anxious, scattered. The Buddha taught meditation not as an escape from life, but as care for the mind. Each moment of stillness is a cleansing, a return to clarity. To meditate is to bathe the mind as you bathe the body. It is not luxury, but hygiene of the spirit. Self-care also means boundaries, as we reflected earlier. It means saying no to what drains, yes to what nourishes. It means protecting your energy not out of selfishness, but out of reverence for life. Imagine carrying a flame in your hands. Would you walk into a storm without shielding it? Or would you cup it gently, ensuring it could continue to burn? Your energy is that flame. Protecting it is self-care. And yet, many resist. They say, "I do not have time." But time is not found, it is created. Even 5 minutes of breath, 10 minutes of silence, a short walk beneath the sky can renew the spirit. The Buddha himself, though he taught ceaselessly, always withdrew into solitude for meditation. Even he, the enlightened one, honored the need for care. Are we wiser than him to think we can neglect it? There is also the matter of worthiness. Many avoid self-care because they do not believe they deserve it. They feel they must earn it through perfection, through achievement, through endless giving. But worthiness is not earned. It is inherent. The Buddha did not say, "You are worthy only if you succeed." He said, "You are worthy because you exist." To care for yourself is to affirm this truth: I am enough, as I am, to deserve rest, nourishment, and joy. Practical self-care does not need to be grand. It can be as simple as drinking water, mindfully eating with awareness, walking slowly beneath the morning sun, stretching the body with gratitude, placing a hand over your heart and saying, "May I be at ease." Each small act is a declaration. I honor this life. I respect this body. I cherish this mind. Think of the ripple effect. When you are nourished, your presence nourishes others. When you are rested, your love flows freely. When you are peaceful, your peace becomes contagious. To neglect yourself is not noble. It is to deprive the world of your full presence. To care for yourself is not selfish. It is to give the world the gift of your best self. Rumi once wrote, "Do not get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." In the same way, self-care transforms wounds into wisdom. Each act of care heals not only the body and mind, but also the old belief that you are unworthy of love. Each gentle step teaches the inner critic that you deserve kindness. Each moment of rest proves that peace is possible. So tonight, reflect. How can you care for yourself, not tomorrow, not when life slows down, but now? What is one small act you can offer yourself, like a cup of tea, a breath of fresh air, a pause of silence, a kind word? Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for perfection. Begin now with what you have where you are. Self-care is not an extra task on your list. It is the ground upon which all tasks rest. Without it, you collapse. With it, you flourish. And as you flourish, your love extends more deeply, your presence more powerfully, your joy more authentically. The Buddha's path is often described as one of compassion. Let us remember that compassion includes yourself. To care for yourself is to walk the path of compassion with integrity. It is to say, I am a living being, precious and fleeting, and I will treat this life with reverence. In the end, the path of self-love and confidence is not about perfection, not about arriving at some untouchable state where doubt never visits, pain never arises, or the critic never speaks again. It is about learning to walk gently with yourself even when the road is uneven. It is about realizing that your worth has never been up for negotiation, that your life is not an accident, that your presence here in this very moment is a miracle. The Buddha taught impermanence as the great truth. Everything changes. Joy changes, sorrow changes, the body changes, relationships change. Nothing is fixed. At first, this teaching may seem frightening, for it reminds us of loss. But if we look more deeply, impermanence is liberation. Because nothing is fixed, nothing defines you forever. You are not bound by past mistakes, not trapped in old stories, not limited by the voice of yesterday's critic. With each breath you are new. With each moment, you are free to choose again. Self-love is at its core the practice of remembering this truth. You are not the person you once were, who doubted, who stumbled, who accepted less than she deserved. You are the person who continues to rise, to grow, to learn. Confidence is not arrogance. It is trust built upon the quiet knowledge that even in uncertainty, you can take the next step. And when you falter, as all beings do, you can forgive yourself, rise again, and continue walking. The journey of these reflections has carried us through many landscapes, learning to set boundaries, to say no, to release those who do not value us, to silence the critic, to act with courage, to care for body and spirit. Each is a thread, and together they weave a tapestry of self-love, a fabric strong enough to hold you, soft enough to comfort you, resilient enough to last through the storms. There is a parable from the Buddhist tradition of a monk who carried a heavy bag on his back. When asked why he struggled so, he replied, "These are my regrets, my fears, my attachments. I cannot put them down." His master said, "But the bag is empty." The monk opened it, and indeed nothing was inside. It was his belief, his clinging, that gave it weight. So it is with us. The burdens we carry often exist only in the mind. To love ourselves is to put down the empty bag, to rest, to breathe, to walk more freely. Impermanence also teaches us to cherish. Because nothing lasts forever, every moment is precious. Every breath is unique, never to be repeated. Self-love means honoring this moment, not postponing life until you feel enough. You are enough now. This breath, this night, this life is enough. The critic may say otherwise, the world may demand otherwise, but reality whispers, this moment is whole. To rest into that truth is the deepest confidence, the purest peace. Rumi said, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons passing over the fields." Acceptance does not mean passivity. It means meeting yourself as you are, not as you wish you were. It means saying, "Yes, I am afraid, and still I will act. Yes, I am tired, and still I will care for myself. Yes, I am imperfect, and still I am worthy." Acceptance is not the end of growth, it is the soil from which growth emerges. Tonight, as you rest, imagine yourself sitting by a vast river. This river is life, always flowing, never still. On its surface float leaves your thoughts, your fears, your memories, your hopes. Watch them drift by. You do not need to grasp them. You do not need to push them away. You are the witness, the presence, the awareness. The river flows, but you remain steady on the shore. This is self-love, not clinging, not rejecting, but resting in the simple truth that you are the sky, vast and open, untouched by passing clouds. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." To live by this teaching is radical, for it means no longer making your worth conditional upon achievement, upon appearance, upon approval. It means choosing kindness in your own mind, choosing compassion in your own actions, choosing trust in your own path. This does not mean the journey is easy. There will be days when the critic is loud, when fear is heavy, when old patterns call you back. On those days, remember, progress is not measured by never stumbling, but by rising again with gentleness. Each time you choose compassion over cruelty. Each time you choose presence over distraction. Each time you choose to begin again, you strengthen the roots of self-love. Confidence too will waver. It is not a permanent state, but a practice. Like the breath, it rises and falls. But just as you return to the breath in meditation, you can return to trust in yourself. When doubt arises, act anyway. When fear whispers, step anyway. Each small act of courage is a stone placed on the path. Look back and you will see you have built a road. So where do we arrive at the end of this long journey of reflection? Not at a final destination, but at a way of walking. To love yourself is not a one-time choice. It is a daily practice, a continual return. To trust yourself is not a single act. It is the accumulation of countless steps. To care for yourself is not indulgence. It is the foundation of a life lived awake. And perhaps the greatest gift of this path is that self-love does not end with yourself. When you treat yourself with compassion, you naturally extend compassion to others. When you honor your own boundaries, you honor the boundaries of others. When you release those who do not value you, you create space for those who do. When you silence the critic within you, become less critical of the world around you. Self-love ripples outward, transforming not only your own life but the lives you touch. Imagine now placing a hand gently over your heart. Feel its steady rhythm, the quiet drum of life. Whisper softly, as a vow, I am enough. I am worthy, I am loved. Let these words sink into the marrow of your being. Let them become the soil in which new seeds grow, the seeds of confidence, of peace, of compassion. When the Buddha was asked what he had gained from meditation, he replied, "Nothing. But let me tell you what I have lost: anger, anxiety, depression, fear of old age and death." Perhaps self-love is the same. It is not about gaining something new, but about shedding what was never truly yours: the critic, the fear, the belief in unworthiness. What remains is your true nature, luminous, compassionate, free. So let us end here, not with an ending, but with a beginning. May you rise tomorrow with gentleness toward yourself. May you walk through your days with trust in your own steps. May you care for your body and mind as sacred temples. May you release what no longer serves and embrace what nourishes. And when you stumble as you will, may you forgive quickly, rise gently, and begin again. For this is the essence of self-love and confidence, not perfection, not certainty, but the willingness to begin again, endlessly, compassionately, courageously. When the night grows still and silence drapes itself across the earth, you may notice something stirring inside: an unease, a whisper of doubt, a restlessness of the heart. In those moments, you may ask yourself, am I truly living or merely passing through the days? Am I honoring the life I have been given, or am I simply surviving? These questions are not to frighten you, but to awaken you. For each breath, each sunrise, each moment you are alive is an invitation to awaken, to live with presence, to touch the sacredness of your own being. The Buddha once said, "Each morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most." These words remind us that no matter what yesterday held, mistakes, regrets, disappointments, today is fresh. Each breath is fresh. Life does not demand that you be perfect. It invites you to be present. To awaken to your worth is to recognize that this day, this moment, is an opportunity to live with compassion, with clarity, with courage. So many live as though life is a rehearsal waiting for the real beginning. They say, "When I lose the weight, when I earn the money, when I am loved, then I will begin to live." But impermanence whispers otherwise. The only life you have is here now. Waiting steals the richness of the present. To love yourself is to refuse to postpone your life until conditions are perfect. Confidence grows when you begin, even amidst uncertainty, even with trembling hands. There is a parable of a monk who sat beneath a tree, lost in thought of all he had yet to accomplish. His master approached and asked, "Why do you frown so deeply?" The monk replied, "I am not yet the person I should be." The master looked at the tree above them and said, "This tree is not yet a towering oak. It is what it is, growing as it must. Should it scorn itself for not being taller?" The monk bowed, understanding. So it is with us. Growth takes time, but worthiness is already present. Self-love is not waiting for the future version of yourself. It is honoring the you who breathes in this moment. Even in your flaws, even in your doubts, even in your unfinishedness, you are worthy. The practice is not to become worthy, but to remember that you already are. And yet remembering is hard. The world shouts endlessly that you are not enough. Advertisements thrive on convincing you that you are incomplete until you buy, until you change, until you conform. Social comparison whispers that others are ahead, better, stronger, happier. But these voices are illusions. They are like mirages in the desert, appearing real but vanishing when approached. The Buddha taught to be wary of delusion, for delusion is the root of suffering, and perhaps the greatest delusion of all is the belief that you must earn your right to love yourself. Let us reflect on this through a Zen lens. Imagine a lotus flower blooming in a muddy pond. The mud is thick, the water murky, and yet the lotus rises, unstained, radiant. Does the lotus say, "I will bloom only when the pond is clear"? No, it blooms anyway, and in blooming it transforms the pond into a place of beauty. You too are a lotus. Life's mud, the difficulties, the imperfections, the pain, does not diminish your worth. It is the very ground from which your beauty grows. Confidence, then, is not pretending to be without mud. It is rising anyway. It is saying, "Yes, I have known struggle, but I continue. Yes, I have known doubt, but I still step forward." True confidence is humility, married to courage. It does not deny weakness, but walks with it. It does not demand perfection, but embraces the whole. This is why self-love and mindfulness are inseparable. When you are mindful, you see yourself clearly, not through the distorted lens of criticism or comparison, but through the lens of presence. You notice the small victories, the breath you took instead of shouting, the kindness you offered instead of judgment, the rest you allowed instead of overwork. These moments may seem small, but they are the stones upon which the temple of confidence is built. The Buddha once told a story of a man pierced by an arrow. Instead of removing it, the man demanded to know who shot it, of what wood it was made, what kind of feathers were used. Meanwhile, the arrow remained lodged, causing pain. The Buddha explained, when suffering arises, do not waste time with endless questions. Remove the arrow. Begin healing now. In the same way, when the critic pierces you, when doubt wounds, you do not delay life, waiting for perfect clarity. Begin now. Act. Gently care for yourself. Take the step. Confidence is built not by analyzing the arrow endlessly, but by pulling it out and moving forward. So tonight, consider, what arrow have you been carrying? What wound of doubt? What story of unworthiness do you continue to hold close? Can you place it down, even for this moment, even for this breath? Place your hand upon your heart and whisper, "I choose to release. I choose to heal. I choose to walk forward." There is also power in ritual. Just as we brush our teeth each morning, we can cleanse the mind with small rituals of self-love. Each morning you might whisper, "I am enough." Each evening you might write one thing you did with kindness. These rituals repeated carve new pathways in the mind. Slowly the critic softens the doubt, weakens the confidence, grows. Karma teaches us that repeated actions shape our future. Rituals of compassion performed daily shape a future of peace. Confidence is not measured in loud declarations. It does not need to announce itself. Often it is quiet, like the mountain that stands unmoved by the storm. You may not feel it growing day by day, but when you look back, you will see you are stronger than you were, calmer than you were, kinder than you were. This is the nature of steady practice. It transforms, not through sudden leaps, but through consistent steps. Rumi once wrote, "With life as short as a half-taken breath, don't plant anything but love." To love yourself is to plant wisely, to choose what seeds you will water. Will you water the seeds of doubt or the seeds of confidence? Will you nurture the weeds of criticism or the blossoms of compassion? The garden will reflect what you choose. And here is the final truth of this reflection. When you love yourself, you give permission for others to love themselves too. Your presence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to them their own worth. Your confidence becomes a light guiding others through their darkness. Your peace becomes a refuge for weary hearts. Self-love is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of service, of compassion, of shared humanity. So, as you close your eyes tonight, imagine yourself as the lotus rooted in the mud, rising through the water, blooming toward the light. You are not waiting for conditions to be perfect. You are blooming now, and in your blooming the world becomes more beautiful. Patience is a rare jewel in our hurried world. Everywhere we are taught to rush, to chase, to strive, to achieve quickly. We measure ourselves against timelines, compare our journeys to others and despair when life does not unfold according to our plans. Yet the Buddha reminds us, impatience is suffering. It is clinging to how things should be, instead of accepting how they are. True peace and true confidence arise not from controlling the pace of life, but from trusting its unfolding. The law of impermanence teaches us that all things have their season. Just as the seed cannot be forced to sprout before its time, so too your growth cannot be rushed. You may plant the seed of self-love, water it with practice, nourish it with compassion, and still for a while see nothing. But beneath the soil, life stirs invisibly. Patience is trusting the unseen, believing that change is happening even when you cannot yet witness it. The critic within often despises patience. It says, "You should be further along by now. You should have healed already. You should not still struggle." These shoulds are heavy chains. They bind you to suffering. But the Dharma teaches that the path is long and each step matters. To expect instant transformation is to forget the wisdom of gradual awakening. Even the Buddha walked many lifetimes before enlightenment. There is a Zen parable of a student who begged his master, "How long until I awaken?" The master replied, 10 years. The student protested, "But what if I practice with all my energy without rest?" The master smiled, "Then 20 years. The student was confused, but the lesson was clear. Impatience itself is an obstacle. The harder you cling to a timeline, the further awakening slips from your grasp. Patience is not passive, it is active. Trust a willingness to walk steadily without forcing, without despair. In your own life, notice how impatience often robs you of peace. You want results, healing, success, recognition quickly. When they do not come, frustration grows. But what if instead of demanding you practiced curiosity? What if instead of saying, "Why am I not there yet?" you asked, "What is unfolding in me now?" Patience transforms waiting into presence. It shifts your gaze from the distant goal to the gift of this moment. Confidence grows when you trust that your efforts are not wasted, even when fruits are delayed. Each meditation, each act of self-care, each moment of compassion is a drop of water nourishing the roots. The tree may not show growth today, but tomorrow or the next season branches will appear. If you abandon the practice too soon, you abandon the harvest. Patience ensures that you stay, that you continue, that you allow life the time it needs. Rumi wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons passing over the fields." This is patience to honor the winter of your being when growth seems hidden, as much as you honor the spring when blossoms burst forth. Without winter there is no spring. Without rest, no renewal. To be patient is to trust the cycle. Often, impatience is born of comparison. You see another's progress, another's success, and conclude that you are behind. But every being walks their own path with their own karma, their own lessons, their own timing. To compare is to ignore your uniqueness. The Buddha said, "Do not compare yourself with others. If you do so, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself." Patience is remembering that your journey is yours alone, unfolding at its rightful pace. There is another dimension of patience, patience with yourself. How many times have you scolded yourself for not healing faster, for still repeating old mistakes, for not being better already? This harshness only deepens suffering. The Buddha taught the perfection of patience, khanti paramita, as one of the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva, not only patience with others, but with oneself. To practice patience with yourself is to meet your stumbles with compassion, your delays with understanding. It is to say, I am still learning, and that is enough. Confidence does not come from speed, but from steadiness. It is not the sprinter who endures, but the walker who continues step by step. The path of awakening is not a race. It is a pilgrimage. Every step, no matter how small, carries you closer. Impatience demands leaps, but leaps are often unsustainable. Patience honors the pace of your heart. There is a story of bamboo. For years after planting, bamboo shows little growth above the surface. Farmers water and tend to the soil, seeing almost nothing. Many might give up, thinking the effort wasted. But after years of invisible rooting, bamboo suddenly shoots up, growing feet in mere weeks. The hidden work was never wasted, it was preparation. So too with your journey. The critic may say you are stagnant, but patience knows that roots are forming unseen, preparing you for sudden blossoming. Tonight, consider where in your life are you demanding speed? Where are you scolding yourself for not being there yet? What if you released the timeline, trusted the process, honored the slowness? What if patience became your practice, as vital as breath, as sacred as meditation? Practical ways to cultivate patience include mindfulness of the breath, watching it rise and fall without hurry. Walking meditation, each step slow, deliberate, unhurried. Gratitude practice, focusing on what is here now rather than rushing to what is not yet. Each of these teaches the body and mind to soften, to release urgency, to rest in presence. Confidence built upon patience is unshakable. It does not waver when results delay, because it does not depend on results. It rests on trust. Trust that seeds grow. Trust that effort bears fruit. Trust that life unfolds with wisdom greater than your own. When impatience arises, remind yourself, this too is part of the journey. I do not need to be further. I am where I must be. And as patience deepens, so does compassion. For when you learn to wait gently with yourself, you learn to wait gently with others. You no longer demand perfection from them, no longer rush their growth. You become a presence of peace, allowing others to unfold in their time. In this way, patience ripples outward, healing not only yourself, but also the relationships and spaces around you. So, as the night embraces you, breathe slowly. Let go of urgency. Feel the rhythm of your heart, steady, patient, ancient. It has carried you all your life without rush, without demand. Trust it. Trust life. Trust yourself. Like the seed, like the bamboo, like the seasons, your growth is unfolding perfectly, even now. Forgiveness is one of the deepest forms of self-love. Many imagine it as a gift we give to others, a kindness extended to those who have wronged us. But the truth is subtler and more profound. Forgiveness is first and foremost a liberation of the heart. To forgive is not to excuse, not to condone, not to forget it, is to set yourself free from the chains of bitterness and resentment. And often the one who most needs your forgiveness is not someone else but you. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at another. You are the one who gets burned. Resentment, whether toward others or toward yourself, poisons the heart, corrodes peace, and steals joy. When you carry old grudges, you carry them not in your hands, but in your body, your breath, your very being. Forgiveness is laying down that coal. It is not weakness, it is strength. It is not defeat, it is freedom. So often the hardest person to forgive is yourself. You replay mistakes endlessly, hearing again and again the critic's harsh voice. Why did I do that? Why was I so blind? I should have known better. These thoughts become heavy stones in the bag of your heart. But the Dharma reminds us the past is gone. You cannot undo it. What you can do is meet it with compassion, learn from it, and release the burden. Forgiving yourself does not mean denying responsibility. It means refusing to let old errors define your worth. There is a Zen story of a monk and his student who were walking along a muddy path. They encountered a woman unable to cross a puddle. The monk lifted her and carried her to the other side. Hours later, the student rebuked him. "Why did you touch her? We monks are not to do that." The monk replied, "I put her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" So it is with our own mistakes. They happened, they ended, but we continue to carry them in our minds. Forgiveness is finally putting them down. Confidence cannot grow in soil poisoned by self-hatred. Self-love cannot bloom in a heart shackled by unforgiveness. To forgive yourself is to create space for growth, to allow new beginnings. You may stumble again, but each time you can choose compassion over condemnation. This is how trust in yourself is rebuilt, not by perfection, but by patient forgiveness. But what about forgiving others? This too is part of self-love. To forgive another is not to say what you did was acceptable. It is to say, I will not let your actions poison my heart. It is drawing a boundary not only in action but in spirit. Without forgiveness, anger festers, and anger enslaves you to the past. With forgiveness, you release the chain. You do not erase the wound, but you stop reopening it. The Buddha's disciple Anuruddha once asked him how to deal with those who had harmed him. The Buddha replied, "Cultivate a mind like the earth. Just as people throw upon the earth clean and unclean things, and yet the earth is not disgusted, so too should you cultivate a mind vast enough to bear all things." This is not resignation, it is wisdom, for clinging to hatred only deepens your suffering. Forgiveness expands the heart, making space for peace. Yet forgiveness is not always immediate. Some wounds run deep, some betrayals scar. It may take time, and that is natural. Forgiveness is not a single act, but a practice. It may come slowly, like the melting of ice. It may require returning again and again to compassion, again and again to letting go. But each step softens the heart, each step loosens the chain. Sometimes people fear that forgiving will make them vulnerable again. But forgiveness does not mean allowing harm to continue. You can forgive and still walk away. You can forgive and still set boundaries. You can forgive and still demand justice. Forgiveness is an inner shift, not an outer surrender. It is reclaiming your heart from the grip of anger so that your energy may flow toward healing, not hatred. Consider this: when you refuse to forgive, you remain tied to the one who hurt you. Your mind revisits the wound again and again, reliving it, feeding it. But when you forgive, you cut the rope. You no longer give them power over your peace. Forgiveness is not saying you win, it is saying I choose freedom. And sometimes the person you must forgive is not an individual at all, but life itself. Perhaps circumstances unfolded in painful ways: illness, loss, disappointment, injustice. You rage at the universe, at fate, at God. Forgiveness here means releasing the demand that life should have been different. It means saying, this too is part of the path. I will walk with it and not against it. Acceptance and forgiveness are twins. One cannot be found without the other. Practical steps toward forgiveness begin with awareness. Notice the weight you are carrying, the tightness in your chest when you recall the wound, the tension in your jaw, the heaviness in your thoughts. Breathe into that place. Acknowledge it. Then offer compassion not only to yourself but to the one who caused harm. This does not excuse them, but it releases you. You might whisper silently, "May I be free from anger. May I be at peace. May they too awaken from ignorance." These phrases, repeated, begin to soften the knots of resentment. Another practice is journaling. Write a letter, not necessarily to send to yourself, forgiving your past choices. Write another to the one who hurt you, expressing all you feel, then releasing it. The act of writing externalizes the burden, allowing you to see it, to hold it, and finally to put it down. Confidence built upon forgiveness is resilient. When you forgive yourself, you no longer fear failure, because you know you will meet it with compassion. When you forgive others, you no longer live in the shadow of old wounds, because you have reclaimed your power. Forgiveness makes you light. Forgiveness makes you free. Rumi wrote, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing there is a field. I'll meet you there." Forgiveness is that field. It is the place beyond judgment, beyond blame, where only peace remains. You do not need to carry the coal. You do not need to bear the stone. You can set them down. So tonight, as you rest, reflect, whom do you need to forgive yourself? Another life itself. Close your eyes. Place your hand over your heart. Whisper gently, "I release you. I release me. I choose peace." Feel the burden lighten. Feel the heart soften. Feel the breath deepen. Forgiveness is not the end of pain, but the beginning of healing. It is not the erasure of memory, but the transformation of its meaning. It is the act of turning wounds into wisdom, chains into freedom, hatred into compassion. And in choosing forgiveness, you are choosing love. Love for yourself, love for peace, love for the precious life you have been given. Resilience is the art of rising. It is not the absence of hardship, but the quiet power to stand again after being knocked down, to continue walking, even when the road is steep, to keep the flame alive, even in the storm. Without resilience, setbacks break us. With resilience, they shape us, refine us, and deepen our wisdom. And at the heart of resilience is self-love, the knowledge that no matter how many times you fall, you are still worthy of rising. The Buddha himself was no stranger to struggle. Before his enlightenment, he endured years of severe asceticism, denying his body, punishing his flesh, believing this would lead to liberation. He fainted from hunger, grew frail, and nearly died. Yet he realized that this path was not the way. He returned to balance, to nourishment, to the middle way. Even in error, he did not abandon himself. He rose adjusted and continued forward. His resilience was not in never faltering, but in never giving up. Self-love makes resilience possible because it transforms failure from condemnation into learning. When you stumble, the critic says, "You are worthless, give up." Self-love replies, "This is part of the journey. Rise again." The critic insists that falling proves you are unworthy. Self-love knows that falling proves you are human, and that humanity is not shameful, it is sacred. There is a Zen story of a master who asked his student to draw a line on the ground. "Now," said the master, "make it shorter without touching it." The student thought long but could not. At last, the master drew a longer line beside it. "See," he said, "your line is shorter now." The lesson: do not obsess over one mistake or one moment of failure. Place it beside the larger picture of your life. Then you see it for what it is. Small part of something much greater, not the whole story. Resilience is born when you learn to zoom out. A failure at work, a rejection in love, a period of illness, these feel overwhelming in the moment. But placed against the span of your life, they are lines in a larger drawing. To love yourself is to refuse to let one moment define you. It is to say, "I am more than this failure. I am more than this pain. I will rise again." Confidence, too, is strengthened by resilience. When you rise after setbacks, you begin to trust yourself not because you never fall, but because you know you can recover. This trust is unshakable because it is rooted not in perfection but in persistence. Others may doubt, the critic may sneer, but your lived experience whispers, "I have risen before, I will rise again." Rumi wrote, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." Resilience is this transformation. The wound once met with compassion becomes a source of strength. The disappointment once accepted becomes wisdom. The loss once grieved becomes tenderness. In this way, resilience does not erase suffering but alchemizes it into growth. One of the Buddha's central teachings was the Four Noble Truths. Life includes suffering. Suffering has causes. Suffering can end, and there is a path to its end. Resilience is the lived expression of this teaching. You acknowledge suffering, this is the first truth. You see its cause, perhaps clinging, perhaps expectation, perhaps ignorance. You realize it is not eternal, it will pass. And you walk the path of healing through compassion, mindfulness, and perseverance. There is another parable of resilience from Zen tradition. A monk was walking through the forest when he encountered a tiger. He fled but soon found himself at the edge of a cliff. Grabbing a vine, he hung between the tiger above and a chasm below. Then he noticed a strawberry growing nearby. With one hand, he plucked it and ate. "How sweet," he whispered. This story reminds us resilience is not only about enduring but also about savoring life amidst difficulty. Even in the face of fear, there can be sweetness. Even in hardship, there can be joy. So, how do we cultivate resilience? First, by softening the voice within. When setbacks come, the critic will try to bury you in shame. Do not believe it. Speak instead with compassion. "This is hard, but I will endure. This is painful, but I will heal." Words are seeds. The ones you plant in your mind will grow. Plant seeds of resilience. Second, resilience grows through community. The Buddha emphasized Sangha, the community of practitioners, because he knew that we rise more easily together. When you fall, lean on those who love you. Let their presence remind you of your worth. Let their stories of endurance inspire your own. To ask for support is not weakness, it is wisdom. Third, resilience requires rest. A tree that bends in the storm survives because it yields, not because it resists endlessly. So too, you must know when to rest, when to retreat, when to allow the body and mind to recover. Resilience is not constant striving, it is the dance of effort and rest, action and stillness, falling and rising. Fourth, resilience is strengthened by perspective. Remember, impermanence, no setback is final. Today's sorrow may be tomorrow's strength. Today's closed door may guide you to a new path. Confidence in impermanence allows you to endure, knowing that change is constant and hope always possible. Self-love turns resilience from mere survival into growth. When you rise with love, you do not return unchanged, you return stronger, wiser, softer. The scar does not disappear, but it no longer bleeds. It becomes part of your story, a reminder of what you have endured, and proof of what you are capable of. Reflect tonight, what moment of pain in your past once seemed unbearable, yet now you see that you endured. Can you honor your own resilience? Acknowledge the strength you showed. Can you trust that the same strength remains in you now, ready to carry you through whatever lies ahead? Confidence is not the absence of fear, but the presence of resilience. Self-love is not the absence of wounds, but the tenderness with which you tend them. Together they form the foundation upon which you can face life's storms with grace. So, as you close your eyes, breathe deeply. Imagine your heart as a flame. Storms may blow, winds may howl, but the flame bends, flickers, and endures. It is not extinguished. It never was. This is you, resilient, enduring, rising. Again and again, compassion is the natural flowering of self-love. When you learn to treat yourself with kindness, when you soften the critic, when you forgive your own mistakes, something beautiful happens. Your heart becomes spacious enough to embrace others. Compassion for others is not separate from compassion for yourself. It is the same river flowing outward. Without self-love, compassion often becomes strained, performative, or rooted in guilt. With self-love, compassion is effortless, arising as naturally as breath. The Buddha taught that compassion, karuna, is one of the four immeasurables, along with loving kindness, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These qualities are called immeasurable because they have no limit, no boundary, no end. Compassion is not selective. It does not say, "This person deserves my care, but not that one." True compassion flows toward all beings like sunlight shining without discrimination. But for many, the hardest being to include is themselves. That is why we begin here, cultivating compassion inward until it overflows outward. There is a Zen parable of a monk who once asked his master, "How do I know if my compassion is real?" The master replied, "If your compassion excludes even one being, including yourself, it is not complete." This teaching reminds us compassion is wholeness. When you cut yourself out of the circle of care, the circle breaks. When you include yourself, the circle is unbroken and all are embraced. Compassion for others begins with empathy, the willingness to feel with another. But empathy alone can sometimes overwhelm. If you open your heart to the suffering of the world without grounding in self-love, you may drown in sorrow. Compassion, however, transforms empathy into action. It is not about collapsing under pain, but about standing firm in love. The Buddha's compassion did not mean he absorbed everyone's suffering into despair. It meant he met suffering with presence, with wisdom, with a commitment to alleviate it where possible. Self-love strengthens compassion because it teaches boundaries. Without boundaries, compassion can become codependency, where you exhaust yourself trying to fix others. True compassion does not mean saving everyone. It means meeting others with kindness while respecting your own limits. When you love yourself, you understand that your energy is not infinite, and that protecting your well-being allows your compassion to be sustainable. There is a story of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. It is said that he vowed not to rest until every being was liberated from suffering. When he saw the immensity of the task, his body shattered into 1,000 pieces. But out of that breaking, he was given 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes to see the suffering of the world and to respond with infinite hands. The story reminds us that compassion is vast, but it must also be wise. No single hand can hold the whole world, but with many hands our own, and those of others, the burden becomes bearable. Confidence and compassion are deeply intertwined. Confidence without compassion risks becoming arrogance. Compassion without confidence risks becoming weakness. But together they create a balance, the strength to stand tall and the softness to bend toward others. Self-love ensures that compassion does not drain you. Compassion ensures that confidence does not harden you. How do we cultivate compassion for others in daily life? Begin with presence. When someone speaks, listen fully without rushing to fix, without planning your reply. Listening itself is compassion, for it says, "I see you, I hear you. Your pain matters." Often, what people need most is not solutions, but presence. Next, practice the simple wish. May they be free from suffering. May they find peace. This wish can be silent, invisible, but it changes the quality of your heart. Even when you cannot solve another's pain, you can hold them with compassion in your mind. Over time, this becomes a habit of the heart, a natural orientation toward kindness. Compassion also means recognizing the humanity in those who harm us. This is difficult, perhaps the most difficult of all. But the Buddha taught that those who cause suffering are themselves caught in ignorance, craving, and delusion. To respond with hatred only deepens the cycle. Compassion does not mean excusing it, means seeing clearly. You may still protect yourself, set boundaries, walk away. But in your heart, you can release hatred and replace it with understanding. This person too is a being struggling with their own pain. Rumi said, "Be like a tree and let the dead leaves drop." Compassion allows you to release resentment, not for their sake alone, but for your own freedom. When you carry hatred, it poisons your heart. When you release it, you become lighter, freer, more peaceful. Compassion also includes action. When you see suffering, ask, "What can I do within my capacity to help?" Sometimes it is a small act, a smile, a kind word, a shared meal. Sometimes it is larger, advocating for justice, offering service, standing in solidarity. Compassion is not passive, it is love in motion. But always it is guided by wisdom, knowing when to act and when simply to be present. Think of compassion as a flame. If you give it to one candle, it does not diminish your own, it multiplies. Each act of compassion adds light to the world. Each moment of kindness, however small, brightens the darkness. In this way, compassion is both humble and powerful. It may begin with a single gesture, but it ripples outward endlessly. So tonight, reflect where in your life can compassion grow. Perhaps toward yourself in forgiving a mistake. Perhaps toward a loved one in listening without judgment. Perhaps toward a stranger in offering a smile. Compassion does not need to be grand. It needs only to be sincere. And as you cultivate compassion, notice how it changes you. Your heart softens. Your anger loosens, your fear lessens. Confidence grows not because you control life, but because you trust the strength of your heart. Self-love deepens not because you are flawless, but because you see yourself as part of a vast web of beings, all worthy of kindness. The Buddha once said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love." This is the eternal law. Compassion is this law in practice. It is the force that transforms cycles of suffering into cycles of healing. And it begins within you, with one breath of kindness, one act of forgiveness, one choice to love. So as the night embraces you, place your hand upon your heart. Feel its rhythm, the steady drum of compassion, beating not only for you but for all beings. Whisper softly, "May I be at peace. May all beings be at peace." Let this wish float into the silence, into the vastness, into the world. Compassion is not something you must manufacture. It is your true nature uncovered when fear and criticism fall away. To love yourself is to uncover it. To extend it outward is to live it. And when you live it, you embody the deepest wisdom of the Dharma, that we are all connected, all fragile, all luminous, all worthy of love. Equanimity is the deep lake beneath the surface waves. It is the stillness at the center of the storm, the calm that remains when joy or sorrow rise and fall. Without equanimity, we are pulled endlessly by life's currents, lifted high by success, then dragged low by disappointment, swayed by praise, broken by blame. But with equanimity, we discover an inner steadiness that does not depend on circumstances. This is not indifference. It is not coldness. Equanimity is love that remains steady no matter what arrives. The Buddha described equanimity as one of the four immeasurables alongside loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. But equanimity is the balance that sustains the other three. Without it, loving kindness becomes attachment, compassion becomes overwhelm, and joy becomes envy. With equanimity, love is steady, compassion is sustainable, joy is expansive. Equanimity is the ground upon which confidence and self-love can stand firm. Consider a tree in the wind. If its roots are shallow, the gusts topple it. But if its roots are deep, the tree bends and sways, yet does not fall. Equanimity is these deep roots. It does not prevent the winds of life, but it prevents you from breaking. There is a Zen story of two monks who were watching a flag fluttering in the wind. One said, "The flag is moving." The other said, "No, the wind is moving." A third monk overheard and said, "Neither the flag nor the wind is moving. It is your mind that is moving." Equanimity is this realization that the mind's agitation often creates the storm. When you rest the mind, you discover the stillness beneath. But how do we cultivate equanimity in the face of life's ups and downs? The first step is to remember impermanence. Praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, all are fleeting. When you cling to praise, you suffer when it passes. When you resist pain, you suffer because it is here. Equanimity comes from seeing clearly both joy and sorrow will pass. Both are waves on the surface of the lake. The lake itself remains. Self-love deepens equanimity because it allows you to rest in your own worth, regardless of external validation. When you love yourself, praise becomes pleasant but not necessary. Criticism becomes painful but not defining. You are no longer tossed endlessly by others' opinions. Confidence grows when you root yourself not in what others say, but in the quiet knowing of your own value. The Buddha taught of the 8 worldly winds: gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute, pleasure and pain. These winds blow constantly and no one escapes them. Even the Buddha was praised and blamed, honored and reviled. To expect life to always blow in your favor is to guarantee suffering. Equanimity is learning to walk calmly through all winds, neither clinging to the pleasant nor despairing in the unpleasant. There is a parable of a farmer whose horse ran away. The neighbors said, "How unlucky," the farmer replied, "Perhaps." The next day the horse returned with 3 wild horses. The neighbors said, "How fortunate," the farmer replied, "Perhaps." The day after, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses, fell and broke his leg. The neighbors said, "How unlucky," the farmer replied, "Perhaps." Soon after, soldiers came to the village to conscript young men for war, but because the son's leg was broken, he was spared. The neighbors said, "How fortunate." The farmer replied, "Perhaps." This story reminds us what seems like fortune or misfortune may change with time. Equanimity trusts the unfolding without rushing to label. In your own life, notice how quickly the mind judges events. This is good, this is bad, this is success, this is failure. Equanimity is the practice of loosening these labels, meeting each event with openness. This is what is. Let me see what it becomes. Such openness is not passivity. It is wisdom. It prevents you from being crushed by despair or intoxicated by success. It allows you to act wisely without being blinded by extremes. Equanimity also requires compassion. Without compassion, equanimity can harden into detachment, but true equanimity is warm like a parent watching over many children. The parent does not love one child more than another. Love extends equally to all. Similarly, equanimity allows you to love all beings without preference, to care without clinging. Confidence rooted in equanimity is serene. It is not boastful or fragile. It does not depend on applause. It does not collapse under criticism. It stands like a mountain, unshaken by passing clouds. Such confidence is rare, but it can be cultivated. Each time you choose not to react immediately, but to breathe, to wait, to see clearly, you strengthen equanimity. Each time you remind yourself, This too shall pass. You deepen your roots. So how do we practice equanimity in daily life? Begin with the breath. When strong emotions arise, anger, joy, fear, excitement, pause. Feel the breath. Anchor in the body. Remember that the wave will crest and fall. Allow space before you act. Another practice is reflection on the 8 worldly winds. Each evening ask yourself, did I experience praise or blame today? Gain or loss? Pleasure or pain? Can I hold them lightly knowing they are impermanent? This practice trains the mind to see beyond extremes. Metta meditation also supports equanimity. As you extend loving kindness, include not only friends and loved ones, but strangers, and even those who oppose you. This widens the heart, softens bias, and cultivates the evenness of care that defines equanimity. And perhaps most important, equanimity grows through trust. Trust in impermanence, trust in your own resilience, trust in the unfolding of life. When you trust, you do not need to grasp desperately at joy or resist fiercely against sorrow. You allow life to move and you remain steady. Rumi wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons passing over the fields." Equanimity is this acceptance, the knowledge that winter and spring both come and go, but the earth endures. Your heart too endures. So tonight reflect. Where are you being pulled by extremes? Where do you cling to praise or despair at blame? Where do you resist pain or crave pleasure? Can you breathe, soften, and allow the wave to rise and fall? Can you rest in the deeper lake of your being? As you close your eyes, imagine yourself as that lake. On the surface, winds stir waves, but beneath, in the depths, stillness reigns. You are that depth, you are that stillness. No matter the storms, above your center remains calm. This is equanimity. This is peace. Impermanence is both the challenge and the gift of life. Everything changes. The body ages, relationships shift, seasons turn, moments pass. At first, this truth may seem frightening, for we long to hold on to what we love and push away what we fear. But the Buddha taught that impermanence is not to be feared. It is to be understood, embraced, even celebrated. For without impermanence, there could be no growth, no renewal, no possibility of transformation. Imagine a world where nothing changed. Flowers would never bloom, but neither would they release their fragrance. Children would never grow, but neither would they laugh with new voices. Rivers would not flow, and the sky would never shift its colors. Life would be frozen, stagnant, lifeless. It is impermanence that allows beauty to exist, because beauty is inseparable from transience. To see this is to begin to live with open eyes and open heart. The Buddha compared life to a bubble, a flash of lightning, a morning dew. These images remind us that everything is fleeting, delicate, precious. To cling is to suffer, because clinging demands permanence in a world that is inherently changing. But to embrace impermanence is to find freedom. When you accept that all things pass, you release the desperate grip and instead learn to dance with change. There is a Zen story of a man being chased by a tiger. Running, he falls over a cliff and grabs onto a vine. Below him, another tiger waits. Above the first, tiger growls. Then he notices a ripe strawberry growing nearby. With one hand, he plucks it and tastes. "How sweet it is," he whispers. This parable captures the essence of impermanence. Life is uncertain, danger surrounds us, but in each moment there is also sweetness. If we fixate only on the tigers, we miss the strawberry. To embrace impermanence is to taste the strawberry fully, knowing it will not last. Self-love deepens when we understand impermanence, because we stop postponing care. Many say, I will love myself when I lose the weight, when I earn the money, when I am successful. But impermanence reminds us, the future is not guaranteed. This moment is the only one we truly have. If you do not love yourself now, when will you? To live waiting is to live half asleep. To live with impermanence is to awaken now. Confidence too grows when we accept change. If you cling to the idea that failure is permanent, you despair. But if you see that failure, like all things, will pass, you can rise again. If you cling to success as permanent, you panic when it fades. But if you accept its transience, you enjoy it fully without fear. Equanimity rests upon this understanding. All states come and go. What remains is your capacity to meet them with grace. There is a teaching from the Diamond Sutra. All conditioned phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow like dew, or a flash of lightning. Thus should one view them. This is not a call to nihilism, but to freedom. When you see life as a dream, you stop clinging so tightly. You can engage, fully loving, laughing, living without trying to freeze time. You realize that what makes the dream beautiful is its passing nature. Reflect for a moment on your own life. Think of a joyful moment from the past, a celebration, a tender embrace, a success. It did not last. Yet does its impermanence make it meaningless? No, its impermanence makes it precious. Now, think of a painful moment, a loss, a rejection, a failure. It did not last either. Even the deepest grief softened, even the sharpest wound healed with time. This too is the gift of impermanence. Pain passes, sorrow changes, wounds become scars, and scars become wisdom. Rumi once wrote, "Try not to resist life's changes. Let life live through you. And do not worry that your life is turning upside down." How do you know that the side you are used to is better than the one to come? To embrace impermanence is to trust the unfolding, to see change not only as loss, but as possibility. What feels like an ending may be the soil for a new beginning. How can we practice embracing impermanence? One way is mindfulness of the breath. Each inhalation arises, each exhalation passes. No breath can be held. The breath itself is impermanence, teaching us in every moment that life is a flow, not a possession. Another practice is contemplation of nature. Watch a leaf as it turns color in autumn, falls and decays. Notice the cycles of sunrise and sunset, of tides rising and falling, of flowers blooming and withering. Nature is the great teacher of impermanence. When we align ourselves with these rhythms, we cease to fight change and begin to flow with it. You can also practice by reflecting on your body. Each day cells die and are replaced. Each year the body ages. To resist this truth is suffering. To accept it is peace. Aging becomes not a curse but a reminder. Each wrinkle is a story, each gray hair a chapter. To love yourself is to love yourself in every season, knowing that each is fleeting and therefore precious. Confidence in impermanence also helps us face death, the great change. The Buddha taught that to meditate on death is not morbid but liberating. When you remember that life is finite, you live more fully. You waste less time on resentment, on fear, on hesitation. You cherish the people you love, you act with courage, you taste the strawberry. Death gives urgency to life, not in haste, but in depth. So tonight, reflect. What are you clinging to, as if it were permanent? What joy are you afraid to lose? What sorrow are you afraid will last forever? Can you breathe into the truth that both will pass? Can you soften your grip and open your hand? Imagine holding a butterfly. If you clutch it, you crush it. If you let it go, it may return and alight again. Impermanence asks us not to crush life with clinging, but to let it fly, to enjoy its presence while it is here, to smile as it departs. As you close your eyes, Feel the breath rise and fall. Feel the day fading into night. Feel your body softening into rest. All of this is impermanent, and all of it is beautiful. You are part of the great dance of change, neither clinging nor resisting, but flowing. And in that flow you find freedom. Gratitude is the flowering of awareness. When you awaken to impermanence, when you see that nothing lasts, gratitude naturally arises, not forced, not manufactured, but as a spontaneous recognition of life's preciousness. To live with gratitude is to live awake, to taste the sweetness of each moment, to bow in reverence for the ordinary miracles that surround you. The Buddha often reminded his followers to reflect on the preciousness of human birth. To be alive, to breathe, to have the capacity to practice, to love, to learn, this is a rare and fleeting opportunity. When we forget this, we slip into dissatisfaction, always wanting more, always comparing, always chasing. But when we remember, gratitude fills the heart. Dissatisfaction fades, and joy arises not from getting what we want, but from recognizing what is already here. There is a Zen saying, before enlightenment chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment chop wood, carry water. Gratitude transforms even the simplest acts. Fetching water, cooking a meal, walking a path into sacred rituals. The task does not change, our awareness does. To see the gift in the ordinary is to live in gratitude. Self-love grows deeper through gratitude, for when you are grateful for your body, your breath, your mind, you no longer treat yourself with harshness. Instead of criticizing wrinkles or aches, you marvel. This body has carried me all these years. This breath has sustained me every moment. This mind, though imperfect, has sought truth and beauty. Gratitude softens the critic and replaces it with reverence. Confidence, too, is nourished by gratitude. When you focus on what is lacking, confidence shrinks. When you focus on what is present, confidence expands. Gratitude shifts your attention from scarcity to abundance, from inadequacy to sufficiency. It reminds you that you already have resources, strengths, and blessings to meet life. Gratitude is the ground upon which confidence stands firm. There is a story of a monk who was constantly cheerful. His students asked him, "Master, why are you always joyful?" He replied, "Because every morning when I wake I ask myself, will I have eyes to see today? Will I have ears to hear? Will I have breath to live? If the answer is yes, what more do I need?" Gratitude is this perspective, not taking for granted what is most fundamental, but honoring it as miraculous. Rumi wrote, "Wear gratitude like a cloak, and it will feed every corner of your life." Gratitude is not only an occasional thought, it is a way of living. When you wear it daily, it transforms how you see, how you act, how you love. Even difficulties can be met with gratitude, not for the pain itself, but for the lessons hidden within, the strength uncovered, the compassion deepened. Yet gratitude is not always easy. When life brings loss, when sorrow weighs, heavy gratitude may feel distant. But even in grief, there are small lights, the comfort of a friend, the softness of a bed, the warmth of tea. Gratitude does not deny suffering, it coexists with it like a candle in the dark. The candle does not erase the darkness, but it gives enough light to walk forward. How do we cultivate gratitude in daily life? Begin with mindfulness. Pause throughout the day to notice the sensation of water on your skin, the taste of food, the sound of birds, the support of the chair beneath you. Each is a gift. By naming them silently, thank you for this breath, this sip, this step, you train the mind to see abundance. Another practice is keeping a gratitude journal. Each evening write down 3 things you are grateful for. They need not be grand. Often the smallest details carry the most beauty. Over time, this practice reshapes the mind, inclining it toward joy. Gratitude also deepens in relationship. Express thanks to others, not only for great acts, but for their presence, their kindness, their being. Tell a friend, I'm grateful for your laughter. Tell a loved one, I'm grateful for your patience. When gratitude is spoken, it multiplies, nourishing both giver and receiver. There is also the practice of gratitude for challenges. When difficulties arise, ask, what is this teaching me? What strength am I uncovering? What wisdom is being born? This shifts perspective from resistance to reverence. Even suffering becomes part of the sacred path. Confidence anchored in gratitude is humble yet strong. It does not boast, for it knows its blessings are gifts. It does not despair, for it sees that even in hardship, blessings remain. Gratitude turns the heart into a wellspring overflowing with peace. There is a parable of a blind man who begged daily on the street. One day, a stranger stopped and gave him not money, but words. The sun shines today. Can you feel its warmth? The blind man lifted his face, felt the heat, and smiled. Yes, he said, I feel it. That smile was gratitude, a reminder that even without sight he was not without blessings. Gratitude is this turning of attention from what is missing to what is present, from despair to wonder. Self-love ripens fully when gratitude becomes your lens. No longer do you say, I will love myself when I am better. You say, I am grateful for myself now as I am. No longer do you despise imperfections. You honor them as part of your journey. Gratitude transforms the self from an object of judgment into a miracle of being. So, tonight reflect, what are 3 blessings in your life right now? Perhaps your breath, your body, your shelter. Perhaps a friend, a memory, a moment of beauty. Hold them in your heart. Whisper softly, thank you. And as you close your eyes, let gratitude cradle you. Feel the bed supporting you, the breath sustaining you, the earth holding you. Feel the vast web of life that allows you to be here now, alive. Gratitude is not something you must search for. It is already here, waiting to be seen. Gratitude is not the denial of sorrow, but the embrace of life, in its fullness, light and shadow, joy and pain, birth and death. To live with gratitude is to live awake, to live with reverence, to live with love. And in gratitude you find the deepest confidence, the certainty that this life, with all its impermanence, is a gift beyond measure. Surrender is the gentle art of releasing control. For much of life we grasp at outcomes, at identities, at plans, at people. We believe that if only we hold tightly enough, life will obey us and we will finally feel secure. Yet the Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering. To cling is to fight impermanence, to demand that the river stop flowing. But rivers do not stop. Life moves, seasons change, time carries us forward. To surrender is not to give up, it is to stop fighting the current, to float, to trust, to allow. Surrender is often misunderstood as weakness. Many fear it means passivity, resignation, or failure. But, in truth, surrender requires great courage. It means facing the unknown without guarantee, trusting the unfolding without control. It is the strength of the leaf that falls when autumn calls, of the tide that recedes when the moon commands, of the heart that opens even when it cannot see what comes next. There is a Zen story of a master crossing a river with his student. The current was strong and the student struggled, thrashing, resisting, nearly drowning. The master floated calmly, allowing the current to carry him. When they reached the shore, the student gasped, "Master, how did you survive so easily?" The master replied, "I surrendered, you fought." Surrender is this wisdom. Resistance exhausts, surrender sustains. Self-love is essential for surrender, because without it, surrender can feel like defeat. The critic says, if you let go, you are weak. If you stop fighting, you are worthless. but self-love replies, I am worthy even when I am not in control. I am enough even when I do not know the outcome. Surrender rooted in self-love is not giving up on yourself. It is giving yourself permission to rest, to trust, to flow. Confidence also grows through surrender. At first, this may seem contradictory. How can letting go increase confidence? But think of a bird learning to fly. It must leap from the branch, surrendering the solid ground, trusting the air to hold it. Confidence is not the certainty of control. It is the trust that you will be carried. When you surrender, you discover a deeper confidence, not in outcomes, but in your ability to meet whatever comes. The Buddha spoke often of not self-anatta, the realization that we are not fixed, permanent entities but ever-changing processes. Surrender is aligned with this teaching. It is releasing the illusion of control over a solid self and opening to the flow of conditions. To say I am not in control is not despair, it is liberation. For if you are not a fixed self, you are free to change, free to adapt, free to become. There is a parable of a man caught in a flood, clinging desperately to a branch. He refused to let go though the current battered him. At last, exhausted, he released, and the current carried him gently to the shore. His clinging nearly killed him. His surrender saved him. How often do we too cling to what is already gone, refusing to trust that letting go will lead us to safety? Surrender also means releasing the need to control others. So much suffering arises from trying to make others behave, think, or feel as we wish. But each being walks their own path, guided by their own karma. To surrender is to allow them their journey, even when it differs from ours. This does not mean tolerating harm, it means knowing the limits of your control. You can set boundaries, speak truth, offer love, but you cannot dictate another's awakening. Surrender here is respect. And surrender means releasing the need to control the future. Plans are useful, yes, but when we believe they guarantee certainty, we suffer. Life has its own rhythm. What you resist may be your teacher. What you fear may be your doorway. Surrender is bowing to this mystery, saying, I will walk with openness, not demand a map. Rumi wrote, try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons passing over the fields. This is surrender, trusting that change is natural, that loss makes space for growth, that endings are beginnings in disguise. To resist is to shiver, in winter demanding spring. To surrender is to find beauty even in the snow. How can we practice surrender? One way is meditation. As thoughts arise, instead of clinging or resisting, simply notice and let them pass. The mind will wander, the critic will shout, but you do not need to control them. You return gently again and again. This is surrender, not fighting the mind, but guiding it with compassion. Another practice is conscious release. Each night before sleep, imagine placing the burdens of the day into a river, watching them float away. Whisper, I release control. I trust life. This ritual trains the heart to let go, to soften, to rest. Surrender also grows through trust in impermanence. When you feel trapped, remind yourself, this too shall pass. When you feel desperate to hold on, remind yourself, this too cannot last. Surrender is not apathy. It is wise participation, flowing with life instead of against it. Confidence anchored in surrender is luminous. It is not brittle, for it does not demand certainty. It is not arrogant, for it does not cling to control. It is the quiet confidence of one who knows. Storms will come, rivers will rise, but I will flow, I will endure, I will find shore. There is also joy in surrender. When you stop fighting life, you free energy for wonder. The sky becomes vast again, the breeze playful, the present moment enough. Surrender is not only relief, it is delight. The delight of realizing you are carried, supported, held by life itself. So tonight reflect, what are you clinging to with white knuckles? A memory, a plan, an identity, a person. Can you soften your grip? Can you trust that letting go will not destroy you but free you? Close your eyes. Imagine floating on a vast river. The current is steady, carrying you. You do not need to row, you do not need to fight, you rest held, supported. The stars above guide you, the water beneath carries you, the night surrounds you in peace. This is surrender. Surrender is not the end of effort, it is the end of struggle. It is not giving up, it is giving over, giving in, giving yourself to the flow of life. And in surrender, you find the deepest freedom. The freedom to be as you are, in this moment, carried by the great river of existence. We have walked a long journey together through self-love, confidence, forgiveness, resilience, compassion, equanimity, impermanence, gratitude, and surrender. Each step has been a stone across the river, carrying us closer to peace. Tonight, as we arrive at the final crossing, let us pause, breathe, and gather all these teachings into the heart. For wisdom is not separate pieces, but a tapestry, each thread strengthening the whole. At the center of everything is self-love. Without it, the critic reigns and all other virtues collapse. Self-love is the ground of resilience, the seed of confidence, the wellspring of compassion. It is the gentle voice that says, "Even when I fall, I am worthy. Even when I stumble, I am whole." Self-love is not vanity, it is reverence for the life entrusted to you. Confidence grows from this soil. Not arrogance, not perfection, but the quiet trust that you can rise again, that you can face the winds of life without being uprooted. True confidence is not built on outcomes, but on resilience, on forgiveness, on the steady knowing that you are more than your failures and more than your successes. Confidence is the mountain rooted deep, unmoved by passing clouds. Forgiveness softens the path. Without it, the journey is heavy, burdened by stones of resentment. To forgive yourself is to lay down the weight of the past. To forgive others is to release the chain that binds you to their harm. Forgiveness is freedom, not forgetting. It is the courage to say, "I will not let bitterness define my heart." Resilience is the art of rising again and again. It is the flame that flickers in storms but never goes out. Resilience does not deny pain, it transforms it into strength. It does not erase wounds, it turns them into wisdom. Resilience is confidence proven by experience, self-love tested and renewed. Compassion flows naturally from such a heart. When you treat yourself with tenderness, you cannot help but extend it outward. Compassion sees the suffering of others and responds with kindness, not because it must, but because it cannot do otherwise. Compassion is love widened beyond the self-love that embraces friend and stranger, even enemy. It is the thousand hands of Avalokiteshvara, reaching everywhere, healing in countless small ways. Equanimity steadies compassion, preventing it from burning out. It steadies joy, preventing it from turning into clinging. It steadies sorrow, preventing it from drowning us. Equanimity is the deep lake beneath the surface, waves the stillness in the storm. It is the reminder that all winds pass, that no gain or loss defines us. With equanimity, you meet each moment with balance, neither clutching nor resisting, but open. Impermanence is the law that holds all these truths together. All things change, joy and sorrow, health and illness, life and death. To resist impermanence is suffering. To embrace it is freedom. Impermanence makes life precious. It teaches us to taste the strawberry now, to love ourselves now, to forgive now, to be grateful now. For tomorrow may not come, and that is what makes today luminous. Gratitude arises naturally when impermanence is embraced. Gratitude transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, the breath, the body, the sky, the presence of a friend. Gratitude shifts our focus from scarcity to abundance, from lack to sufficiency. It is the song of the heart that sees every moment as a gift. Gratitude deepens self-love, strengthens confidence, and colors life with joy. Finally, surrender crowns the path. Surrender is not defeat, it is trust. It is the willingness to float with the river of life, to release the desperate grip of control, to trust that you are carried. Surrender does not mean apathy, it means freedom. It allows you to act wisely, to rest deeply, to live fully without the illusion that you can master the tides. Surrender is bowing to the mystery, saying, "I trust the unfolding." Taken together, these teachings form a circle. Self-love nurtures forgiveness. Forgiveness strengthens resilience. Resilience inspires compassion. Compassion requires equanimity. Equanimity rests on impermanence. Impermanence awakens gratitude. Gratitude blossoms into surrender. And surrender deepens self-love again. This is the mandala of the awakened heart. A circle without beginning or end, always turning, always returning. So how do we live this in daily life? Not through grand gestures, but through small choices. Each time you soften the critic's voice, you practice self-love. Each time you rise after a fall, you practice resilience. Each time you release resentment, you practice forgiveness. Each time you listen deeply to another, you practice compassion. Each time you pause before reacting, you practice equanimity. Each time you savor a fleeting moment, you practice gratitude. Each time you release control, you practice surrender. These small acts repeated shape the heart, shape the life. Rumi wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons passing over the fields." This is the essence of the path, to live with acceptance, with tenderness, with trust. The seasons will turn joy and sorrow, love and loss, health and decline. But your heart can remain open, steady, luminous. And so, as we close this journey, let us reflect what has touched you most deeply. Was it the reminder to love yourself as you are, the courage to forgive, the strength to rise, the balance of equanimity, the peace of surrender? Each teaching is a door. Choose the one that opens for you tonight and step through. Now, as you rest, place your hand over your heart. Feel its rhythm, steady, faithful. Whisper softly, "I am enough. I am worthy. I am free." Let these words sink deep like roots into the earth. Let them nourish you, carry you, cradle you. Close your eyes. Imagine a vast circle of light, encompassing all beings, friends, strangers, even those who oppose you. Include yourself in that circle. Whisper, "May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free." This is the final blessing of the journey, the recognition that your peace is bound with the peace of all. The river of life continues. Seasons will change. The critic may return. Storms may rise. But within you now is a compass, the wisdom of self-love, confidence, forgiveness, resilience, compassion, equanimity, impermanence, gratitude, and surrender. Return to them when you need them. They will not fail you.